Universal job change. I chose jobless individual. Tomorrow is the college entrance examination. It's time to test the strength of our Shinonome High School. I transferred to a summoner and contracted 3 summons. Rest assured, I will definitely lead my team to take off and defend the face of Shinonome High School. I successfully transferred to a noble mage at level 10 by virtue of my talent. Woohoo, take off. I have already planned. Choose an elemental mage for the second turn of the profession, and strengthen my elemental output. You're thinking too far. The second transfer will be at level 30, and we can be promoted to level 10 to get the opportunity to change jobs, thanks to the country's educational support. If you want to upgrade in the future, you have to rely on yourself. A few years ago, Xuanlong announced a 10-year compulsory education support plan, popularly known as the 210 plan. This means that all children must be given free and compulsory education for a period of 10 years, so that they can be transferred to the 10th grade and at the age of 18. Even if the talent is not enough for the student to change to a combat career, it is possible to smoothly transfer to the life occupation of the production department and the gathering department. Everyone is equal. Everyone has a chance to change jobs. Everyone has the hope of becoming a pillar of the country and becoming a giant. Xuanlong country spends a lot of financial and material resources to support compulsory education, giving every student the opportunity to successfully change jobs, and hopes that everyone will be like a dragon, strengthen the country, and promote the prestige of our country. When the Xuanlong Kingdom announced this compulsory education support plan, Tianda's efforts shocked the world, and you can be regarded as the first batch of achievements, both at home and abroad attach great importance to this achievement. Jiangnan Province, as a major province of education, will definitely be watched by many people in this commemorative college entrance examination, and the champion of the gold list title, and even the top 100, will definitely have a generous scholarship award. Even if it's not for the scholarship, it's for our Jiangnan Province and even for the Xuanlong Kingdom, and we have to raise face. Jin Sheng, the head teacher on the podium, waved his fist and cheered for the college entrance examination students in the 3rd class. At this time, Yunshin, who was in the penultimate row by the window, looked out of the window boredly. It's been 3 years. If he hadn't had time to get used to it, he might not have understood the above words. It has been more than 70 years since the world changed, and the game has completely descended into reality, and the monsters within it have become a demonic disaster. It turned out that the Cross-Era God Domain game was incubated by the will of the Earth, in order to allow humans who came to the game world through the light brain to imperceptibly kill monsters and upgrade and grasp monster information in advance. After that, the game completely overlapped with the entire reality. The surface area of the Earth expanded tens of thousands of times, and countless secret realms and dungeons descended. And everyone can also increase their strength by upgrading and changing jobs. I heard that through the 2nd and 3rd turns in the future, the diversity of the entire career system will even be enriched to thousands of kinds. In such a world context, the college entrance examination has naturally become the next copy assessment. Yunshin, what profession have you chosen? Do you have confidence in tomorrow's copy? At this time, Lei Yun, the male classmate in front of him, turned his head and asked. You'll know tomorrow. Yunshin didn't say much. If he chooses no profession at all, but is still a scattered person without a career, then it will definitely cause great controversy. Everything depends on tomorrow's college entrance examination. In fact, if he hadn't activated the system half a month ago, he wouldn't have made up his mind to take the road of being unemployed and scattered. By the way, don't you really need to form a team? The person who wrote the question heard that it was Lao Zhe of the Education Bureau, who is known for making difficult candidates, and this college entrance examination may be difficult, and the maximum number of copies may be 3. Out of his capacity as squad leader, Lei Yun reminded again. It's just that this invitation to team up was still rejected. This guy. Lei Yun shook his head, and when he learned that Yunshin still had to run 10 kilometers before returning home after school, he couldn't help but secretly admire his self-discipline. Dozens of minutes later, in the school playground, Yunshin, who had finished his running exercise, was prompted by the system. Running, 10 km, 10 km, push-ups, 100 100s, sit-ups, 100 100s. Squat, 100 100s, ding. Daily quests are completed, and you can earn rewards from the following selections. Reward, 1. Gain 10 free attribute points. Reward, 2. Gain 10 skill points. Reward, 3. Random skill book. When 1 is selected, Yunshin's personal panel suddenly has 10 more free attribute points. Not only that, but the moment you get the reward, all the fatigue accumulated in your body disappears, and even your own state returns to its peak state. Not bad. Yanin is very satisfied. He has the biggest shortcoming of the system to make up for the jobless scattered people, and he is confident that he will still be invincible in the world in the later stage. After all, the free attribute points he can obtain every day are even more than the 6 attribute points that he can level up in a single career. And he's rewarded every day, and others are rewarded only when they level up. As it comes and goes, the gap between them will continue to widen. Even if it is the second turn in the back, it is difficult to smooth out the third turn. In addition, Yanin can also obtain other rewards from the tasks issued by the system. For example, Achievement Mission. According to the host's score in the college entrance examination, you will receive a matching achievement reward. Note: this reward is linked to the unemployed individual you have selected. The system is produced and must be a high-quality product. In this way, Yanin will inevitably shine in this college entrance examination. He wants to strive to be the top one and become the champion. Following the day of the college entrance examination, on the square of Dongyun High School, 13 classes have gathered above. In the middle, I saw a bronze secret realm gate half suspended in front of everyone. When the bronze gate is lit, it will be the copy opened, the official college entrance examination will begin, and you can enter the secret realm gate with your mind in contact. Jin Sheng, the head teacher, emphasized to his students. However, this year's exam questions must not be very simple. The copies of the college entrance examination arranged by Lao Zhe before the questioner. One is more difficult than the other, and the students of the class who are responsible for the questions every year are all crying in pain. It's hard, it's so hard. I hope Lao Zhe won't work too hard this time. Many people hope that Lao Zhe will be a person. Before the bronze gate was officially opened, no teachers and students knew what the exam questions were. 10 seconds countdown. 10, 9, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. At 8:30 a.m., the bronze gate, which was originally dull, suddenly released a brilliant luster. Under the background of the sun, the glittering bronze gate slowly opened, opening to both sides, and a deep and vast aura suddenly emerged from it. Every student with a tense expression naturally did not miss the opportunity to answer the question, and immediately let their consciousness communicate with the bronze gate. Dungeon Secret Realm. Goblin Dungeon. Level 10 to 13. Difficulty: you can choose easy, hard, nightmare. Number of people: 1 to 5 people. Notes: unknown dungeons are full of goblin settlements, and the fierce and hideous goblins are very fond of human flesh and blood. When the pop-up window showed the goblin dungeon, everyone's expressions were completely uncontrollable. Wait, it's a dungeon. There won't be a layer structure. Goblins are not scary. What is scary is the scale of numbers. There will not be many dungeons. It's worthy of Lao Zhe. Don't think about it easy when this guy asks questions. Everyone complained. But it can be, quickly. The entire wide square immediately ushered in many calls for team invitations. Of course, the role of a nurse like a priest is fragrant, and he doesn't worry about teaming up at all. Of course, considering in advance that the person who wrote the question is Lao Zhe, everyone has already had an old team in advance. In general, class balance is important, and warriors, mages, and priests are a must. The warrior front row is the MT to attract hatred, the mage AoE has a high damage output, the priest is crazy in the front row, and the rest of the team classes depend on what needs to be added. If someone needs to make up the output, you can have another mage, or a magic swordman, a martial artist, a sharpshooter, etc. The jack of all trades are summoners, mechanics, hunters, and other professions. However, Yanin, who had already prepared in advance, chose to place a copy alone. When his mind communicated with the bronze gate, within a few seconds, his entire figure had disappeared in place. The college entrance examination has officially begun. Yanin, the head teacher, Jin Sheng, had already noticed his behavior of entering the copy alone, and he was immediately shocked. The more people enter the dungeon, it means that the weight of the score will be reduced, and even the fixed rewards in it may require several points from several people. If a person clears the dungeon alone, the difficulty of choosing is also high, and the weight of the score is naturally high, and one person can enjoy the boss reward exclusively. But the stakes will also be very high. This is not a real game. Once you die in it, it is really a complete fall. The evil tiger is still afraid of the wolves. He only hopes that this student, who he is quite optimistic about and has a talent for fighting, will know the difficulties and retreat. The old team had already been prepared, and in less than a minute, all the college entrance examination students in the square had entered the copy without exception. In the next second, the invigilator in front of the bronze gate immediately waved his hand, and saw a holographic screen directly presented in the sky above the gate, and all the student information and status of Dongyun High School appeared on the screen without exception. Class 1 and Class 2 naturally attracted much attention as rocket classes, and in addition to the class teachers in the square, there were also principals, sophomores, and first-class students sitting around to watch. It's worthy of the rocket class, except for the formation of 3 teams. Basically everyone chooses a single brush dungeon. Wait. There is also a person in the 3rd key class who chooses to brush the copy alone, and his career information shows none. This sentence immediately attracted great attention. Suddenly, there was a great uproar and controversy emerging from the entire viewing platform. Jobless and scattered. Oh my god, he's crazy and chose not to change jobs? What kind of routine is this? I don't really think that it is great for unemployed casual people to master the low-level skills of all professions. You know, scattered people can learn vocational skills. For a while, everyone's attention fell on the Yunshin in the 3rd class, and the blank full-time information could only be said to be unique, too much to attract attention. The principal of Shinonome High School immediately turned dark, as if waiting for an explanation. Jin Sheng, the head teacher of the 3rd class, didn't know where to start, and he also seemed a little stunned and shocked. Yunshin, as a student he values very much, has always been very stable before, and he has always reassured him. For fear of pressure, he basically didn't talk to him much before the college entrance examination. Who knows, the other party shocked him all of a sudden. What does this guy want to do? But his talent is indeed very suitable for Sanren, but this is not a game. Tuyile is not good, and Sanren has no future at all. You've come to the Goblin Dungeon. You have selected the difficulty, Nightmare. You have obtained the Return Scroll. Please note that the Return Scroll will be invalid when you are attacked. When the slight dizziness passed, Yunshin's figure had already come to a dungeon. The surrounding decorations are very rough, stone pillars and murals, all of which are filled with a backward and barbaric atmosphere. Among them, there are many human skeletons in front of you as pendants, decorated on the walls on both sides. A puddle of coals and barbecue utensils not far away is enough to conjure up a lot of bad pictures. Single. The hardest level. If you are not careful, you will die without a place to be buried, and as for the scroll back to the city, if the chanting is interrupted, it will be invalid, and I am afraid that you will die at that time. Even if you are lucky enough to escape, but if the copy can be completed, then you will naturally fail the college entrance examination. The harvest is big, but the risk is big. This Shan Yunshin is very clear and confident. Ready to start, he clenched his fist, then just walked slowly and methodically towards the dungeon corridor in front of him. At this time, Yunshin's body was already full of equipment, and he held a scepter nearly 2 meters long in his left hand. On his back was a bronze spear and shield. The gun was inside, the shield was outside, and the body of the gun was wrapped in gray oiled paper, but the head of the gun still released a slight cold luster. The bulge of the belt was also stuffed full, and I saw a bright gun on each side of my body. Scepters, spears, shields, guns. I have to say that just this shape looks a bit nondescript. Is this a mage or a warrior, or a sharpshooter? The power gloves on both hands made people think inexplicably whether this person should be a martial artist. The characteristics of unemployed people are vividly reflected at this moment. Any weapon and equipment can be played, it's just. If there is such a big benefit, how can other people change jobs? If it hadn't been activated half a month ago, without the activation of the strongest professional support system, he wouldn't have chosen to scatter if he was killed. But now, the unemployed scattered people are destined to shine on him. It's coming. His keen perception had caught the sound of a gradual approach from outside the corridor. Yunshin didn't slow down. Instead, his feet accelerated, and his whole body began to run. What is surprising is that with so much equipment on his back, he did not slow down his speed at all, but the running figure actually pulled out a faint afterimage. Hurry! The ghost swordsman's pre-primary skill has already been used, and with a 30% movement speed bonus, Yunshin's speed is getting faster and faster. At the end of the passage, I saw a goblin monster with a green body and a hideous face had appeared. As soon as the eyes on both sides met, These backward and savage goblin guards were like hyenas that smelled blood, and they actually held a shield in one hand and a stone axe in the other, and suddenly rushed towards Yunshin. There are quite a few of them, and a rough count of them is more than 15. The distance between each other is getting closer and closer. Staying less than 10 meters, holding a scepter in his hand, Yunshin, who had the style of a battle mage, took the lead in attacking. Fireball. A blazing red ball of flame formed instantly, but the scale of the formation was quite large, and it was the size of a basketball for a short time. The temperature around me has risen a lot. It took less than a second to brew. Boom. The fireball wrapped in great power suddenly fell on the goblin guards in front of them. I have to say that the landing point of this fireball is enough to make people praise. Impartial, just in the very center of the guard. The dense charging formation suffered from it. Bang. The blazing flames exploded in an instant, and the surging flame power and the unbridled impact fluctuations that bloomed uncontrollably swept away many goblins at once, completely breaking up the entire formation. Several of them even showed that the level 10 goblin guards were killed instantly. Among them, the surviving goblins were all injured and bleeding, and they were directly seriously injured. Fireball, as a prerequisite skill for the mage profession, is a must-have for every mage before changing jobs. It's just that Yunshin's almost instantaneous fireball technique is really amazing, and it is even more powerful than the explosive fireball that can only be learned by a mage. Not, though the big show belonging to Yunshin has officially begun. Before, he was holding a scepter in one hand, now his right hand was in the scepter. Click. Just a twist, as if pressing a switch, only to hear the sound of a bang, a slender and sharp sword pulled out of the scepter. A sword in a staff. Sword in scepter. Bronze 2 stars. Can be a scepter or a sword. When you choose as a scepter, wisdom +5. When you choose a blade, strength +5. The next moment, holding the slender blade in his hand, Yunshin seemed to teleport, and the wind was under his feet, and he suddenly rushed to the side of a badly injured and bleeding goblin soldier. Treading the wind/magic swordsman, the pre-primary skill of the swordsman class. The goblin who was about to fall to the ground hissed and raised his hand to resist. Poof! But the sharp blade had already touched its neck faster. Woola! A big head rises to the sky. Blood splattered out, leaving a beautiful blood-colored arc on the walls of the passage. And that's not all. The wind under Yunshin's feet rose again, and the figure that was in a state of rapid speed accelerated again, and suddenly rushed to the edge of a nearby goblin. The old technique is reapplied in general, and it is easy to solve it again. But that's not the limit. Each time he successfully executed an enemy, the wind that gradually dissipated under Yunshin's feet would continue to gather again, allowing him to break through to the next target. Back and forth, he was like lightning, drawing a number of beautiful movement tracks. In less than 5 seconds, 10 badly wounded and bloodied goblin soldiers were executed by him with a sudden face. They all fell to their own swords. What Yunshin didn't know was that he had been broadcast live. The scene of his show this day, and even his previous performances, have aroused the admiration and shock of many teachers and students in the audience outside. The auditorium outside the examination room was naturally not waiting there dryly. The holographic screen projected into the air is ready to broadcast the copy performance of individual top students in real time. It stands to reason that this distinction of being observed naturally falls on the students of Class 1 and Class 2. It's just, the focus is no longer on the rocket class students. The Yunshin of the 3rd key class, which is quite a maverick and unemployed person, has attracted the attention of all teachers and students. Humph. Just let me see what kind of performance this scattered student can perform. Principal Feng in the audience looked quite angry, and even blamed Yunshin for not taking the college entrance examination seriously enough, and not taking Xuanlong Kingdom's educational obligations seriously at all. This anger, even Jin Sheng, the head teacher of the 3rd class, was implicated, and his eyes looked a little unfriendly. Jin Sheng scolded in his heart, "I am afraid that his performance will not be able to be maintained." He was about to step forward to explain, but the principal was angry in his heart, so he naturally didn't dare to rush forward. The invigilator was transferred to Dongyun High School from the province, and although he was not related, he had no reason to refuse a principal. In addition, he is also very curious about what kind of flowers can be played by an unemployed person. Buzz. Soon. The surface of the holographic screen projected in midair suddenly fell like a drop of ink, and the entire surface of the screen was flooded with ripples and waterlines. In the blink of an eye, a real-time projection of a dungeon was immediately displayed on the screen. The figure that looked nondescript and wore various professional equipment was captured by everyone at once. Every teacher and student in the school looked at Yanin, who was preparing to equip himself. At this moment, even the strict and meticulous head teacher of the rocket class was a little curious about how this scattered person wanted to play. After all, he had also heard Jin Sheng mention Yanin's name many times, and this outstanding student was not a person who gave up on himself. Rely on. Holding a scepter, carrying a war spear and shield, wearing light armor, and 2 guns hanging from his waist, the most outrageous thing is that the fist gloves on his hands seem to be reserved for martial artists. It's a hodgepodge, isn't it? There's no way. Everyone is coming from newcomers, and before changing jobs, even if you learn the primary skills of other professions, if you want to use them, you can only wear the corresponding weapons. With this momentum, it seems that this guy has learned a lot of all professional skills. All professional primary skills, just the career path mastered by the Xuanlong Kingdom. There are at least more than 300 kinds of evidence. And that's not even counting some general low-level skills. No matter how you look at it, there are so many more skills than a single profession. But the problem of shortcomings is also reflected at this moment. It's more but not fine, and the more you get to the back, the more it's useless. It's that everyone can recognize the problem. The advanced skills learned after the transfer are naturally much stronger than the primary skills, and the more you go to the back, the second and third transfers, this advantage is more and more reflected. The most outrageous thing is that every time they are upgraded, the person who changes jobs naturally gets more natural attribute points and skill points than the unemployed people. Advanced vocational skills can't be learned. The basic attribute is going to be left behind again. What if there are no jobs and scattered people master hundreds of low-level skills in all professions? Weak. It's just too weak. But this guy is very handsome, and it's more than enough to be a star. Some junior sisters in the first and second years of high school paid attention to Yanin's face. The angular handsome face is full of perseverance, and with the tall and slender figure, even the most demanding people and even male compatriots are a little sour in their hearts. Come on, Yanin. At this moment, there was a schoolgirl cheering up. And there are quite a few of them. This is a society that looks at faces. Hearing that there were still people cheering for him, Principal Fang's face became more and more ugly, and he was about to turn around and scold, but in the next second, all the audience behind him erupted in surprise. So fast! This guy is carrying so much equipment and running so fast. Oh my god, don't you say I haven't forgotten, with so much equipment on his body, this guy's weight is already a bit outrageous, but he still runs so fast. It seems that a newly transferred soldier can't run so fast at a high speed. Everyone immediately noticed the special thing about this jobless person. Hear the words. Principal Fang immediately stared at the screen. I saw that the tall and sturdy figure was walking like flying, carrying heavy loads, and in a state of rapid speed. The rushing figure actually pulled out a burst of afterimages. Did this guy give all his attribute points before level 10 to his physique? There are teachers who try to solve the puzzle, it's just. Soon was slapped in the face. Because the attacking figure had already taken the initiative to raise the scepter, and in less than a second, the surging fireball was wrapped in a huge amount of magic and bombarded the oncoming goblin guards. This spell casting speed is so fast, and the magic power is also quite good, it should be that a lot of attribute points are given to the wisdom attribute. No. The power of this fireball technique is a little beyond imagination. Watching the fireball that smashed in the middle and completely dispersed the goblin guards, everyone was shocked. It's so clever. Without the slightest deviation, the explosion range happened to cover the entire guard, and even if they didn't die, they were all seriously injured. In just a moment, all the teachers and students who were watching the joke turned serious. It's not like a coincidence. This person can still release stably and accurately land under the attack of movement, he is simply a combat genius. And the skill of Fireball seems to have been filled with skill points by him, at least with the power of LV6, is he specialized in spells? This is the conclusion that everyone subconsciously comes to. Because the Fireball technique is so strong, this person seems to have specialized in the wisdom attribute, and the weapon in his hand is a scepter. But the crowd was quickly slapped in the face. The blade is out, and there's a long sword hidden in the scepter. A sword in a staff. With a bang. I saw Yanin holding the sword in his hand and stepping on the wind, like a lightning speed, constantly rushing forward and killing. In a matter of seconds, the wind slash, which was constantly slashing and taking effect, drew a beautiful lightning movement trajectory. Behind him, however, were the corpses of fallen goblins. Death is like the wind, always with me. At this moment, many people's minds inexplicably thought of this game. Handsome. That's too handsome, isn't it? This hand harvests the remnants of blood, it is extremely beautiful, and it takes away more than a dozen seriously injured goblins in an instant, beautiful. Death is like the wind, always with me. At this moment, this unemployed scattered man carried the wind and flocks, came and went without a trace, and when the knife fell, more than a dozen good heads flew out. Handsome. Handsome to the extreme. This hand alone is enough to be uploaded to major video websites and apps by editors and upmasters, and millions of views are definitely indispensable. I got it, and the perfect screen recording was successful. There were already some first and second year high school students in the audience who raised their mobile phones to take pictures. After all, it is very rare for unemployed, scattered people to appear in the college entrance examination, and they were originally to shoot some funny material for scattered people, but they didn't expect to record this precious TN show scene. Something is wrong. This wind slash is a pre-primary skill for magic swordsmen and swordsmen. It doesn't have the effect of killing monsters to refresh the cooldown. And the power of this wind slash is too strong. The high school students present had already made a career plan, and there were not a few swordsmen and magic swordsmen, and they immediately realized that Yunshin's skill damage was a bit strong. Not only that, his swordsmanship is very accurate, he seals his throat when he sees blood, and his sword is deadly, and he doesn't drag mud and water at all. The major class teachers and teachers all saw the student's swordsmanship. Just like his incomparably accurate fireball landing point, this student's fighting style seems to be quite perfect and superb. What is his skill set? At this time, Principal Fang had already sat up straight, changed his previous annoyance, and asked the head teacher of the third class with great curiosity. Jin Sheng naturally didn't dare to slack off, and hurriedly ran over and said, Yunshin's student's talent is all-round, and all skills and qualifications can raise 2 levels. But you can only max up to C+ quality. Between the ages of 12 and 15, some people will show their talents. Some people who show mastery of magic and magic regeneration talent must choose a magic-related profession. Some people have shown a talent for increasing combat critical hits and speeding up physical attack speed, and naturally choose warriors, swordsmen and other professions. Of course, there are also people who have specific talents in their life careers. In other words, the talent for self-awakening influences one's subsequent career choices to a certain extent. It's a pity. After hearing this, Principal Fang, who was very interested, shook his head silently. This talent can't go far in the future, there is no future, no. He made a judgment with ease. Jin Sheng on the side smiled bitterly and didn't dare to refute. In fact, Yunshin's talent is indeed a bit embarrassing, and he can raise his skill qualification by 2 levels, but unfortunately it can only be as high as C+. The ceiling was sealed all at once, the outlook is not clear. After all, after the second career change, the vocational skills that can be learned start with C qualifications. The entire awakening talent is completely useless after the second turn, and it can't bring positive feedback at all. No wonder he would choose to, without a job. Someone sighed secretly. After all, the low-level skills of all professions are all E-level qualities without exception, and the more you learn, the more you do match his all-round talent. Only, what about the future? A full-time casual person can't go far, just like his talent. It's just that he's really too showy. The screen is still playing the picture of the copy under Yunshin in real time. There were 5 waves of guards in the long corridor, all of them were goblin guards. Illuminated by the pillars of fire hanging on both sides of the corridor, these goblins, armed with shields in one hand and stone axes in the other, continued to meet the incoming figures. The human figure rushing away did not stop at all. As always, raise your hand to open the way with the fireball, and then use the wind slash to continuously move at high speed, carrying the wind flock, to harvest these goblin guards who are either dead or disabled. Wind slash, C+. Rush towards the target enemy, and the next sword attack damage will be increased by 30% and attack speed by 30%. If you can successfully execute the enemy and refresh the cooldown, the wind will continue to advance to the next target. On nightmare difficulty, There are 5 waves before and after, with a total of 100 goblin guards. In less than a minute, they fell in pieces like harvesting rice. The last goblin guard let out a wail, its weapon already dropped, its hands clasped tightly around its neck. It was just that the blood was dripping from between its fingers, and the sword just now not only cut off its throat, but also cut off half of its neck. How can this stop the blood? With a pop, the goblin guard couldn't hold it anymore and fell to the ground with a bang. The human figure that had already left it behind had stopped galloping. After walking through the long road, he saw a tightening gate in front of him. Obviously, after pushing open the underground door, another wave of fierce battles awaited this unemployed man. At this time, this slender and tall handsome figure stopped, he slowly returned his sword into the staff, and then gave himself a blue returning technique. This scene is naturally broadcast live in front of everyone. It's so handsome. In the audience, someone finally broke the silence. When Yanin was carrying the wind and killing 4 waves of monsters in succession in an extremely ethereal and chic manner, it once made people breathless and calm, clenching his fists with both hands, excited about it. It's the same as the first wave before, once the sword is out, you will definitely die. On the same monster, a second sword will never fall. If the first wave was just a coincidence of harvesting remnant blood, then the next few waves perfectly illustrated this person's fighting instinct and talent. A genius in swordsmanship, and his magic is also very accurate, and it can even be said that it is outrageous. This guy has a natural fighting instinct, and he can be called born for battle. Jin Sheng, you actually concealed his talent. The 2 head teachers of the first and second classes of the rocket class were a little annoyed and blamed Jin Sheng for hiding a good seedling. Generally speaking, the elite seedlings of the key class have to be sent to the rocket class. But today, I saw that such a genius was missing. The list and information of the good seedlings of my 3rd class have been given to you, and Yanin is also in it, but after you saw his awakening talent, you didn't pick it up, and now you blame me. Jin Sheng, a good old man, naturally had anger and immediately retorted. In and out of his words, there was some ridicule of Principal Fang. I only saw the information on paper, but I couldn't feel the terrifying expression of this genius on whom he had high hopes in actual combat. At this moment, Jin Sheng was also somewhat able to understand Yanin. Yes. For such a combat all-rounder who is quick to master weapons, choosing a class alone is a waste of his talent. He is an all-rounder who can do anything, he can do anything. How can you be bound by class options to your combat talent? It seems that it is the awakening talent on paper that sways Yanin, but behind the scenes, this talent of combat intuition has not pushed him to this step. Only by being unemployed can he truly show his talent to the fullest. Seeing the blood sealing the throat, the sword is deadly, and there is not a single superfluous movement. It's a pity that this person didn't turn into a demon swordsman or swordsman, and I have one less kendo genius. It's a pity that he didn't become a mage. Can you see how powerful his spells are? The layman looks at the bustle, and the insider looks at the doorway. Only students who are proficient in the path of magic know that Yanin is a little outrageous. Elemental magic requires chanting and gesture guidance, communicating the elements of heaven and earth to guide the combination of tiny particles. In the process, the slightest carelessness will be interrupted, at least fine, or at worst, the spell will backfire. Although the fireball technique is too rudimentary, it will be able to get started, and there is no too cumbersome gesture guidance. But this Yanin was running, his movements slowed down by half a step, and he easily ended the ceremony and released the fireball, and landed in the middle of the monster pile very accurately. Once a coincidence can be explained. However, 5 waves of guards in succession, all of them were killed in the same way without exception, which perfectly illustrates how accurate this person's control of mana is. Watching him fight is like watching an art show about slaughter. Read on. Don't change the channel. Many people started to laugh. The previous principal asserted that there was no future, and can't go far, which seemed to be a change of channel. Now after seeing such a combat skill that was as accurate as a surgical scalpel, this Principal Fang also fell silent all of a sudden. He was also a little annoyed that he had made up his mind too soon. Who would have thought that this teenager would hide such an exaggerated battle intuition from under the literal information? This is indeed a rare good embryo. The 2 of you in the rocket class, why did you miss such a person? Principal Fang is also an old Tai Chi player. All of a sudden, the spearhead of unknown people was pushed to the heads of these 2 head teachers of the rocket class. Looking at Principal Fang's cold eyes, the two head teachers of the rocket class smiled bitterly. It's over, it looks like the performance bonus is going to be cut by this old guy. However, they also scolded secretly, and this wave was indeed blind. On the side, Jin Sheng secretly breathed a sigh of relief, at least there was no reason for his performance bonus to be cut. On the contrary, Yunshin, this young man, shouldn't give him more surprises. Here I am, push the door. In the picture, after a few seconds of rest, the big male protagonist of the screen who was looking up in front of him pushed open the underground city gate in front of him. Squeak. The dungeon gate made a tooth-aching sound, and it was in disrepair, and a cloud of dust was falling from it. When the two doors were opened, a vast hall was revealed. And goblins of different shapes and colors are scattered all over the hall. Ho! Perhaps it was this movement that disturbed the monster inside. The goblins with red eyes and drooling saliva turned their gaze to the humans who had come to visit. Yunshin swept his gaze, and a rough count showed that there were at least hundreds. Moreover, the corridors connected outside the hall were full of shadows, and sounds were heard from time to time, and it was obvious that there were also enemies. Monster. Red Goblin. Level 12. Qualification, Bronze 2 stars. Skills: Fire Mastery, Fireball Technique, Flame Combo. Monster. Goblin Grenchers, Level 11. Qualification, Bronze 1 star. Skill: Precise Throwing, Self-Madness. Monster. Goblin Centurion. Level 14. Qualification, Silver 1 star. Skills: Berserk, Shockwave, War Trampling. With the general skill, Identification, that everyone has, every monster can display information. In addition, in Yunshin's sight, there is also a blue-skinned, blue goblin who is good at ice elemental spells. Goblin Cavalry, riding a foal. A goblin warrior, wearing bone armor. Even the gods chatter, reciting the unknown beast language of the goblin shaman. There are many types and different forms. Each wave of guards ushered in by the narrow corridor before tested the output of strength, and each wave gave people a chance to rest. But now, the vast and boundless terrain is for people to meet the bombardment of hundreds of goblins head-on. Of course, you can go around the terrain and pull kites in circles against stone pillars to control monsters. It's just that the pressure on the survival of the individual is compressed to the extreme. Either way, the death threat is hundreds of times higher than it used to be. It's kind of interesting. A smile appeared on Yunshin's angular face, and his resolute expression did not lose any momentum. Roar. The hissing roar grew more intense. These goblins don't give the intruder much time to think about it. Led by the goblin Centurion's roar, the goblins throughout the hall began to attack. Click. Under the crisp sound of footsteps, I saw a goblin knight riding a tall horse take the lead. They came galloping on their horses with bone spears in hand, and in the distance there were goblin shamans dancing in place, beating war drums with their hands. Under the beating and roaring sound of the war drums, it actually has an inexplicable magic power, which has a buff effect on the goblin knight. Not only that, but the red and blue goblins in the distance cooperated with the charging knights, waving the bone staff in their hands, ready to cast their own ice and fire magic. There are front row cavalry charges, warriors with shields to pounce forward, shamanic milk blood buffs in the back, and magic and throws in the back row. Each performs its own duties and cooperates tacitly. This scene is enough to pull everyone who enters into the battlefield. Can you believe this is a brainless goblin? About it? Yunshin, who responded, raised his scepter high. Illumination. In a flash, a blazing white ball suddenly rose from the top of the scepter, and the blinding daylight blinded the eyes of all the goblins at once. The instinctive neighing of pain from the ushered war horse directly threw the knight who was on top of it and flew it away. The shaman dancing and beating the drums in the distance also covered his hands in pain, and his skills were interrupted by himself. Similarly, the red and blue goblins were all stimulated by the bright light, and their eyes were temporarily blind and weeping, and their singing was interrupted. Who would have thought that this general skill, illumination technique, which basically no one would waste skill points, would be used by Yunshin to have an excellent lethal effect at this moment? In this way, a round of daylight rose in the vast and boundless hall. Buzz. Even with the eyes closed, the blazing white light was enough to penetrate the eyelids of every goblin. The previous series of offensive behaviors were completely resolved by this sudden arrival of the first level light technique. When the blazing light dissipated, the goblin knight, who had fallen to the ground, opened his tearful eyes and desperately searched for the figure. It's just that the human figure that appeared in front of the door of the hall has long since disappeared without a trace. Roar. Angry roars rang out one after another. The noisy beast language expresses the urgent meaning of finding out human beings. In the back. When the goblin warrior looked back, he suddenly realized that the hateful human figure had appeared in the back row. What's even more hateful is, a short sword in the hand of this human had severed the neck of an elderly shaman. At his feet, another goblin shaman standing next to him had already collapsed in a pool of blood. This is a conscious slash. Generally speaking, it will be very difficult for a shaman who can cast buff magic and milk to survive. Of course, this is not only the goal of cutting the back row, but also the high lethal mage class. Roar. Someone killed the shaman in such a face, and the most powerful goblin Centurion in the hall suddenly activated his berserk skill under the roar of rage. The whole tall physique, which was originally a small hill, was even taller all of a sudden. The knotted muscles and the giant-like body of more than 2 meters and 3 meters tall make it difficult to connect with the weak and obscene ordinary goblins. In a state of rage, the Centurion, bathed in a layer of blood-colored fluctuations, ran. Boom. Every step of the step caused an earthquake-like tremor to the entire hall. It's just that the figure he pounced forward finally pounced. The human figure in front of him only raised his right hand slightly. Invisibility. The pre-primary skills of the assassin class were suddenly used. Quietly invisible, silent. Even the goblin's keen sense of smell couldn't capture Yunshin's figure. Danger. The red goblin instinctively had a bad premonition in his mind. The red and blue goblins have been blessed with excellent magical talents, but they have also been much weaker than their peers. Less than a second. A huge force suddenly lifted its body, but Yunshin, whose true body emerged from the invisible state, grabbed its neck from behind. With a click, it directly twisted its neck and cut off its breath. The goblin mage on the other side suddenly looked anxious. Of course, it had already raised its hand and cast an ice elemental shield to bless its body, and the beast bone scepter in its palm had already aimed at Yunshin. Whoosh! Cold, sharp ice picks flew away. It's just that. The human figure that stood a few meters away disappeared silently. Blue Goblin's eyes widened, his head full of question marks. And in the next second, the life instinct inexplicably urged its body, as if it wanted to face the threat head-on. Not good. A figure had completely enveloped its thin body. Backstab. Backstab. See, after active release, it will cause itself to circle behind the enemy, and the next attack will increase attack speed by 30% and armor penetration by 50%. It's the primary ability of the assassin again. After Yunshin activated the skill, he directly circled its back in an instant. Then, the dagger in his left hand, the hidden blade sticking out of his bracer to be precise, pierced the head of the goblin mage in front of him. It stands to reason that the blue goblin has already cast an cryo shield. If you don't break that shield, you can't deal damage to the main body. It's a pity. The backstab has armor penetration, and combined with Shang Yunshin's own good strength attributes, the extremely sharp blade penetrates the shield, and even his head is completely pierced. Roar. When the goblin Centurion saw this, he suddenly became more and more irritable. The blood-bathed furious figure charged, slamming into it like a giant tank with great force. Yunshin's face was grim, and he had no idea of fighting this boss at all. Inexplicably, the figure in the original place turned into 4 doppelgangers and rushed everywhere. Doppelganger. Needless to say, the assassin's primary skills are self-explanatory. The goblin Centurion, who was so angry that he could only be led by the nose. With the limited wisdom of his head, he couldn't tell the truth from the fake, and after 7 or 8 seconds of hard work, he was finally struck by it with an axe. Doppelganger. Bang. Watching the doppelganger spread out like smoke, the Centurion only felt angry. In the process, more and more of the surrounding subordinates fell in rows. Goblin Shaman, Red and Blue Goblin, Goblin Skurin. This kind of crispy creature, with the existence of a positional threat, has completely become the soul of the revenant under Yunshin's hidden blade. The ruthless backstabbing stunt, the invisibility technique that could not capture the trace, all caused great trouble to these goblins with limited brain capacity. The most outrageous thing is that even the clone that inherits 35% of all attributes has caused a lot of casualties. 20 seconds later, the crispy skin in the back of the hall was swept away. Among them, there are also some violentized Centurions who were killed by mistake in the case of a gas bomb in vain for their compatriots. It's time. The Goblin Centurion's boss rage is over. Perhaps the movement here is too great, and more goblin cavalry have been pouring in from the passages around the hull to provide rapid support. And Yanin, who had finished flying the kite, had already stopped, and the scepter he held in his right hand was raised again. Buzz. 6-star arrays continued to emerge in midair. Water elemental summon. The water element in the air suddenly condensed rapidly, and I saw that the elemental lifeforms in the form of water were like little giants taking shape. Thunder Warhawk summons. Under the summoning circle, the War Eagle body that had already been contracted descended from another space with lightning. The most excessive thing is that Yanin, who used the primary skill of the summoner profession, also came to a goblin summoning. Under the control of the summoning contract, the cannibalism of compatriots is naturally unavoidable. Kill them all. Yanin gave the order. Without the support of ranged units and spells and fellow nurses, Yanin knew that his water elemental summon was enough to make these physical monsters eat a pot. In addition, the Thunder Warhawk at a height of 13 is even more able to output unscrupulously. And he himself, naturally, he single-handedly and concentrated on taking down this level 14 Centurion. Wow! At this moment, there were bursts of carnival shouts from outside the audience again. Due to Yanin's exquisite operation, at this moment, all the teachers and students in the audience seat, and even the invigilator, did not plan to change the channel. Assassin's pre-skill, stealth, backstabbing, doppelganger. This guy is so subtle that I can't even find a single flaw or fault. It's textbook-like. Even the strict assassin instructor praised it from the bottom of his heart. It's worthy of being a combat all-rounder, but I didn't expect this wrist to hide a hidden blade. He can use any weapon. Stepping on the wind, a chic and deadly sword. Subtle magic. A treacherous psychedelic way of assassination. Lots of weapons, all of them proficient. This is not a game, even if it is the same level of skill, put it on everyone, due to the problem of personal proficiency, it may play a different effect. For example, Yanin's wind slash can see blood and seal his throat, and he will not spare a sword to harvest monsters. And on another person, I am afraid that I will not be able to accurately cut my throat. As long as the blade is deflected and cannot land on the monster's vital point, it will not be able to make the monster die, and the skill cooldown will not be refreshed. Normally, it would be too difficult to replicate Yanin's operations. And the way Senior Yun flies a kite is really beautiful. It's really handsome. This Centurion boss didn't hit an effective attack in a berserk state, and was completely walked up as a dog. In the process of walking the dog, I also solved a number of mages, shamans, and grenadier units by the way. Handsome. I just want to watch a blockbuster movie or a top-10 short film, and my blood is boiling when I watch it. This is not a low evaluation. In fact, the teachers at Shinonome High School feel the same way. As a key high school teacher in the city, the teachers have good strength, and they naturally feel that there are many mistakes when they look at the students' battles and operations. But, in Yanin's body, he felt that it was very cool to watch his battle. No attack is superfluous. Every step is just right. If you compare it to a great movie, you can't even cut a part of it and throw it away. Chic and free, leisurely strolling, worthy of the all-round combat talent. Here, it's a summoner's primary skill, soon. Under this overwhelming battle, everyone can see that Yanin on the screen has released multiple summoning arrays. 3 water elemental spirits, wonderful, elemental units restrain physical units, at least exempt a lot of physical damage, goblin cavalry and warriors are considered useless. There is also the appearance of the Thunder Warhawk, the level is actually level 13, and most of the throwers are gone, and the goblins can't reach the Warhawk. In midair. Rely on. And the classic goblin summon, there are 7 of them, this is to make them kill each other, inexplicably happy. Historically, the summoner unit has been jokingly referred to as the least operational and technical class. It is also known as the tyrant profession. It all depends on the strength of the contract creatures, and if you have money, you can even contract a lot of powerful creatures. Of course, limited by his own level and strength, he naturally can't contract with creatures from another world that exceed his own level too much. Not. The jobless scattered people on the screen are based on the contract creatures they have on hand. Create favorable environmental conditions for your own summoning in advance. For this alone, many summoners don't even have a concept of this. Who said that the summoner profession has no gold content? Look at how people play. A teacher who teaches the summoner profession used this to teach sophomores. Here it is. The most exciting boss battles. The Centurion's fury is over, and now, the unemployed man has stopped and is ready to take out the boss. There was no chance to rest at all, and the Centurion boss, who had already been angry above his head, launched a charge under the roar. The huge physique, which was like a small mountain bag, directly set off a great momentum at the moment of activation. Only this time. At the moment when it was activated, Yanin had already taken something from his backpack space and threw it away. Entrap, see. Lay a trap that can bind enemy heroes for 2 seconds. This is a prerequisite initial skill for the mechanic profession. At the moment when the Centurion charged, the trap device that suddenly landed on the front foot was stepped on by him. Bang! The clip-shaped trap immediately clamped the Centurion's right foot, and the surging force of its internal machinery tightly restrained the opponent and prevented it from moving. The blow that should have been launched to charge towards Yanin was easily diffused by him. And that's just the beginning. Whoosh! Almost instantly, the scepter held high in Yanin's hand had unleashed a blazing fireball technique. The blow was a direct blow to the opponent's head. Post! The goblin Centurion roared, instinctively holding his hands high in front of his skull, blocking his view, barely holding out the fireball with its feet bound. It's just that the damage of this blow has completely torn the armor of its hands, and a pair of arms are dripping with blood. After the force under his feet completely dissipated and the trap was ineffective, the Centurion took a step forward in anger. But this step, to fall boom. Huge explosives blasted from under its feet, and the Centurion's huge giant body was blasted out. Your dangerous device has successfully triggered the knockout effect. Under the pop-up prompt, it turned out that Yanin was actually under the fireball technique, and at the same time, another skill of the mechanic, dangerous device. Dangerous device. Place a device on the ground that triggers an explosive device, and after another 3 seconds, it will detonate the area, and the enemy unit in the center of the area will trigger the knockout effect after the explosion. I have to say that Yanin's tactical arrangement is to the extreme. Even if he completely directed the plot of this scene. The Centurion shielded his face with both hands in order to block the oncoming fireball, and as a result, he also blocked his view. In a fit of rage, he didn't expect that the next step would fall into another trap. The poor boss was accurately calculated by Yanin. Many people think that summoners are the most brainless and simple profession. Then, at least in the eyes of the students of Dongyun High School, the mechanic profession is definitely one of the most difficult in operational tests. The release of traps and dangerous devices requires careful timing. Although the goblin brain capacity is limited, it is clear that throwing a few mechanical devices in front of the opponent's eyes, the mechanical energy surging in it will inevitably follow the instinct and walk around. So, the question is, how do you get enemy units to step on your clamps and trigger your trap device? This is definitely a great test and a difficult problem. At least many people who embark on the career path of mechanics may also focus too much on the path of arming themselves and wearing mechas. After all, trap skills are too much for instant reactions and individual operations. And Yanin is different. The mechanic-related skills he has mastered are basically full of this kind of trap-type ability. In front of him, he even made this Centurion boss eat full of damage. After triggering the knock effect, Yanin's raised scepter unleashed the fireball spell again. Whoosh! The terrifying fireball flew away and slammed into the flying figure. This one-handed bombardment not only had a combo effect, but also caused this bulky stupid big man to smash into the monster pile of goblin warriors. With a bang, at least 3 fellow goblins were pressed to the ground by him and became a pool of bloody mud. And Yanin's serial combo is not over yet. Entanglement Tentacles. Class, Druid. With its pre-primary skills, Woola. The earth swelled, and I saw that the roots of plants were extremely thick through the ground. The Centurion, who was burned by the fireworks, immediately resisted violently, but the extremely difficult green vines refused to let go of his limbs. What angered the Centurion the most was that it couldn't even unleash its War Trample skill due to falling to the ground. Berserk is on a cooldown, and the blood is unable to reach the Berserk state again. And now it can only rely on its own unmatched physical strength. It's just a single blow of the frost bullet has flown in and landed on its body. This is naturally a pre-primer skill for the mage. It is also a favorite skill of every mage who likes to fly kites, dealing cold damage to enemies while reducing their attack speed and movement speed. At this moment, the Centurion, who was suffering from pain, only felt that his limbs were becoming more and more sluggish under the influence of frost condensation. Mired in the endless entanglement of plant roots and the slow speed of frost, the Centurion's troubles are not yet over. After killing more than a dozen goblins, the Thunder Eagle, who flew freely in the air, immediately stared at the immobile boss with its cold eyes. Zzz. Under the orders of its master, it took the initiative to release the skill, Falling Thunder, and the terrifying lightning turned into a blue lightning bolt and slammed down on the Centurion's head. On the other side, the water elemental spirit summon that can actively release the skill, Water Arrow, also immediately sprayed water arrows, giving this boss a make-up blow. Under the contact of water and electricity, the damage of the thunder was completely all over the body. It also caused the Centurion to stiffen and sway under the cry of pain. The last of the end whoosh. Another fireball shot out, and the exhausted Centurion was defenseless from his mortal wounds. There was a loud bang, and its head was completely blasted apart by a surging fireball. Goblin Centurion, a level 14 guard boss, was killed without fighting back under the support of many of his subordinates. Bang! With the sound of a sword being drawn, Yanin had already drawn his sword out of its sheath. The sword in the staff struck again, carrying the wind in the wind, and once again reaped the goblin miscellaneous soldiers with the sword. At the same time, Yanin's series of actions have once again sparked unprecedented discussion. This Goblin Centurion boss is too miserable. He was teased to death, and it seems to have been pinched to death by the other party from beginning to end. Damn, this delicate chain of control is terrifying. Yes, after stepping on the trap from the restricted site of the fireball technique, everything is broken, and one control skill after another is played, and it is simply not a way to live. It's amazing, not to mention the summoner profession. Even the most difficult trap-setting skills for mechanics to master have been perfected by him. I have to say that there are too many skills for unemployed people. In the audience, all the students watching the game felt that their minds were strongly impacted by the worldview. They have also seen a lot of videos of professional lethality after 2 or 3 turns. But in any case, the power of those high-level skills is far less shocking than the jobless scattered people who are observing in front of you. It's obviously a bunch of elementary skills, basic, simple, and everyone who wants to learn can get the skill book from school. But it is such an inconspicuous little skill, in his own hands, and in the hands of this Yanin, it completely exerts a very different effect. The timing of the summon is right, and the environment is even created in advance. Even the placement of trap devices is more proficient than that of a seasoned mechanic. There is nothing more imaginative and creative than. This person can also trigger the enemy's stiffness effect with the summon's hydro skill. And, didn't you find a single detail? That's the boss's most lethal range skill, War Trample, which can be used with both feet through the earth. At this moment, it is rare for the invigilator, who has already watched and fascinated, to stand up and speak. His words woke up all the students. Even some of the teachers showed a look of sudden realization, obviously not expecting it before. This kid, it's so fine. The details are in place. If the average person can still say that it is a coincidence, the blind cat meets the dead mouse. But after witnessing this all-round combat talent and omnipotent unemployed person, who would have thought that it was a coincidence? Awesome! Congratulations to Dongyun University for producing such a unicorn. Generally speaking, in order to maintain neutrality, invigilators are naturally not allowed to make random remarks. However, Yanin's performance was so good that he couldn't help but blurt out words of praise. Second, he has been an examiner for many years, so he naturally knows that this person has a probability of more than 90% being the first person in the college entrance examination of Dongyun High School. Dongyun High School, as a key college entrance examination, is not outstanding in Jiangnan Province, but it is not weak. If the students in the follow-up level can go further, not to mention the top 10 in the province, the chances of competing for the top prize may be very large. In this way, it is not bad to have a good relationship with Shinonome High School and form a good relationship. Feng Shui takes turns. It's time for us to have a great, from Dongyun High School. Ha ha ha. Principal Fang was already smiling at this moment, quite happy, and there was no trace of displeasure at all. Since the establishment of the school, the most powerful college entrance examination student in Dongyun High School is only the 8th in the province. Now it coincides with the first batch of results of the Xuanlong State's 10-year compulsory education support plan released this year, and the scale of the college entrance examination has expanded many times compared with the past. More qualified applicants than in the previous 3 years combined. Everyone is like a dragon, everyone has the opportunity to be promoted. No matter how you look at it, the competitive pressure of this session can be called epic, hellish difficulty, the top 10, and the gold content of the champion can be said to be much higher than in the past. I think this Yunshin guy is determined to win the top 5 in the province. Lao Yuan, you are conservative, there are definitely the top 3. The best record in school history should have been broken this year. The teacher on the side was already a little flattering. Xiao Jin, come and sit down here. Principal Fang's attitude can be described as a 180-degree change, and now he is kind of talking. There was originally a vice principal sitting next to the principal, but now he deliberately gave way to Jin Sheng, the head teacher of the 3rd class. As the old saying goes, a mother is more expensive than a child. Now he, the head teacher, is covered with light from Yunshin. Not. Though this kind of half-time champagne is somewhat discrediting. Jin Sheng smiled, but he was still cheering for his proud student in his heart. Those who travel 100 miles are half 90. Under the difficulty of the nightmare, the exam may be more than halfway, and there will still be some difficulty in the future. He only hopes that Yunshin must be stable. Seeing that Jin Sheng was a guest of honor, the 2 rocket class teachers smiled bitterly. Although helpless, they also knew that the students in the 1st and 2nd classes would probably not be as good as him. In the end, I only hope that the 2 brothers Xiaowen and Dewen, who were the first to be pinned on high hopes, can fight for me. The teachers were talking. Naturally, the students in the audience were also full of discussions. Sanren is too showy, hundreds of low-level skills of all professions can be played. Teacher, I also want to be a jobless person, don't turn to a mage, and follow the example of Senior Yun. It seems that the unemployed scattered people are the version of the answer. Many of the first-year high school students nodded their heads. As soon as he finished speaking, the student who coaxed him not to become a mage was scolded. I asked you to learn Yunshin to learn his monster-killing skills and ideas, and to learn how he subtly used his skills to make it exert 105% of the effect, but you didn't grasp the point. Aside from the top combat awareness, you can use a dagger and a hidden blade as a mage? Do you know how to use a sword? Can you use 2 guns? Do you know how to fight? Let's put it this way, if you also follow the trend and play scattered, then you may not be able to pass the college entrance examination, let alone the grades. Whether you can survive or not is another matter. The teacher in the 1st year of high school poured a basin of cold water on these brain-based students. This is not a game. The strength of skills at the same level varies from person to person. If you don't master the weapon, it's really fatal. If you want to fully master hundreds of primary skills, you must have a good grasp of the weapons used in various professions, at least with a good level of proficiency. It's so hard to ask for, it's just a trick. In this way, it seems too difficult to disperse without a job. I'm still honestly a mage, this moment. Those students who were shown off and wanted to follow suit were finally hit by their own shortcomings. Is this road only accessible to this Senior Yun? He who learns from me lives, and he who resembles me dies. Some students had this phrase in their minds. What they have to learn is the fighting skills and awareness of the other side. Instead of blindly following the trend and choosing to scatter people. Someone was not convinced. One of them muttered in a low voice, I see that Senior Yun still has a gun on his body that is useless. Does he still have a top-notch marksmanship with accurate headshots? And the spear and shield on the back? And the power gloves of both hands? There won't be a one-handed fighting technique. That's an exaggeration. He's also human, so I don't believe he can fight spears, and he can also fight and grab warriors and martial artists. Before this, everyone had already noticed that the equipment worn by Yunshin was not ordinary and complicated. Now that I think about it, if this guy still has a very exaggerated and accurate headshot marksmanship. At this moment, even the teacher who opened his mouth to refute may not be able to accept it. Even if this young man is cultivating in his mother's womb, he won't be so exaggerated. I think it's gone. After all, he is more than halfway through the exam, and he has not seen any use, so his proficiency may naturally be far inferior to his own kendo, assassination skills, and even magic casting. The senior one teacher said firmly, "It's just that for some reason, in the end, his heart is inexplicably a little empty." It's over. So fast. The hall was completely cleared, and all the support was gone. In this short period of chatting and discussion, all the goblin monsters on the screen and in the hall have been killed. It's still so precise, so beautiful, and doesn't make a superfluous sword. Huh. He walked to the next underground level, not intending to rest. At this time, Principal Fang and the other teachers, who were still smiling just now, also looked pale, frowned, and couldn't help but sit up straight. Messing around. Why did this kid suddenly lose his breath? Principal Fang was a little displeased. This Jin Sheng, who had been worried all the time, made his heart beat a lot faster inexplicably. It's time rush, but wouldn't it be too hard? After all, this is the college entrance examination, and there is a score after clearing the customs. As long as the top students in the province rush to the top 100 in the province, they will basically choose the single-player nightmare difficulty mode, and the rest depends on the time of the dungeon clearance. Now, Yunshin, who had just been touted to the sky, did not choose to rest, and directly pushed the door of the next level. This directly made all the teachers and students who had a much more relaxed atmosphere quickly nervous. It's too presumptuous. It's just vexatious. This guy shouldn't be going to work hard for the champion. Is he going crazy? Do you really think you have a show? Seeing that the figure on the screen did not rest, and walked down the door of the next level, everyone felt incredible. I took a break from the previous level, now it's all of a sudden. Maybe it's because of the concern that is chaotic, and everyone is inexplicably worried. Some of the people who were unhappy before even rebuked each other for committing the crime of arrogance. After all, this is not an ordinary next copy. As long as you clear the customs. This is the college entrance examination. Everyone who enters the copy not only has to face the monsters inside, but also have to compete with other college entrance examination compatriots. Ideographic period. 1 second faster, maybe hundreds of people forward. If you are slow for a second, you may not be able to enter the undergraduate admission line. At this time, the invigilator stood up and reminded many students. If you don't work hard, how can you fight for a better future? Many students in the audience slandered in their hearts, and the truth was so. But, if you don't have a good rest and don't recover, aren't you afraid of dying on the spot for such an aggressive adventure? The consideration in this is undoubtedly a psychological game. Obviously, the invigilator also appreciates this kind of hardworking, adventurous student. Looking at these unconvinced students, he shook his head and sighed. Human beings can resist the ravages of demonic disasters. How can it not be the death of past heroes? Thinking about the gains and losses of one's own interests and the safety of one's life, in this college entrance examination, you will only lose your initiative. The most important thing is, you've all ignored the summons time. When the words fell, many people were suddenly awakened. Yes, there are still quite a few units in his summons, especially his Thunder Eagle that is a bit fierce. Minions have a lifetime, and abilities have a very long cooldown. If you want to make the most of the value of the only summons left, it is indeed the best way to move on to the next level. Of course, this is still a bit presumptuous for many students, even conservative teachers. Here comes. It's up to him to perform next. Under the expectant gaze of everyone, the only male protagonist in the audience pushed open the underground door and entered the next level. Compared to the previous city gate that had fallen into disrepair, now the second door is extremely heavy, and the whole body is glowing with black iron. If it is an ordinary magician profession, it is estimated that it may feel a little difficult. For Yunshin, it is not a little troublesome. In fact, he has only been in possession of the system for half a month, and he has already obtained the basic attribute of strength. That is more powerful than the physical attack class through the 10 free attribute points given by the daily mission. A one-handed push takes no effort. Even after the previous high intensity, and very intense assassination, sword slash, and other strengths, he only felt a little tired. The problem has little impact. This is obviously related to the basic attribute of one's own constitution. The profession of scattered people is naturally a comprehensive and balanced development. Strength 42, Constitution 40, Agility 40, Intelligence 40. Everyone has a personal information panel, which also clearly displays the personal data of Yunshin today. Generally speaking, 4-dimensional data can be regarded as an average of 10. The relationship between the awakening of the body at the time of the transfer of the 10th level varies from person to person, and there will be different fluctuations. But the first and second people in the most powerful rocket class in Dongyun High School, counting the extra points before level 10, the 3-dimensional data detected is only about 25 on average. Looking at Jiangnan province, the more famous high schools naturally have many strong rivals, and there are some with an average of 30. There's even a hidden profession in the middle of this. Moreover, the free attribute points of the vast majority of compatriots are not evenly developed, and they need to be selective. Mage, naturally focus on wisdom attributes. Assassin, naturally the main ascends to agility. Therefore, there must be very few people who are higher than themselves in a certain attribute in the examination room. But Yunshin didn't care at all. The number of skills he has mastered is at least several times higher than that of others. His awakening talent is omnipotent, and even his innate instinct to fight, and now he has the help of a golden finger. He doesn't care about the pride of the sky and the existence of a hidden profession. No matter how fierce the competition is this year, he is determined to win the championship. As for why he pushed the door without thinking, it was naturally because he wanted to maximize the remaining existence time of the summon. Squeak. When the black iron gate was completely pushed open, the Thunder Eagle and the 2 water elemental spirits behind him, and even the only 3 remaining goblin warriors rushed in. Roar. At this moment, the sound of roaring chirps had resounded throughout the underground palace. Giant pillars 7 or 8 meters high were scattered on both sides, and goblins who were napping on the ground immediately woke up when they felt the intrusion of outsiders. There are still different forms and variety. Maybe it's because of the palace, but the ordinary goblin warriors and cavalry are gone. But there are many more goblin shamans and goblin mages who seem to be of higher rank. It's kind of interesting. Yunshin raised his eyebrows indifferently. This means that the level is less tolerant of errors. The enemy's damage is much higher, and once it is hit by a series of attacks, it will naturally be the end for the other candidates. In fact, due to the excessive pursuit of efficiency, Yunshin's body naturally did not have much magic left at this time. This is also the reason why outsiders are so worried about his recklessness. But this is obviously a misunderstanding. They didn't dissolve people too much. 1. The amount of blue consumed by scattered people, that is, the loss of magic power for each skill, is much less than that of professional skills. 2nd, there is a profession that has a much lower loss of blue energy. That's the sharpshooter. At this moment, after Yunshin released the blue returning technique, he put down his scepter. Meanwhile, his hands had already drawn the 2 guns he had carried on his waist on either side. 1 long and 1 short, 1 white and 1 silver. With 2 guns in hand, you don't need too much surging magic, just rely on bullets to penetrate each other's heads. And this will test how accurate the individual's marksmanship is. Coming. He's finally got the gun, still in both hands. Damn. Oh my god. I don't believe this guy is still a sharpshooter. I can't believe he plays every weapon so well. At the same moment, the audience outside went crazy. Even Principal Fang felt the infection of his emotions, clenched his fists, and looked at the unemployed scattered man who raised his 2 guns with all his attention. With 2 guns in hand, this is to show the beginner skills of a sharpshooter? Wait. Did anyone tell me what the sharpshooter's primary skills are? That's a lot. Quick draw, lethal ammo, quick reload, passionate chase, sliding, explosive, aerial shooting. In fact, there are quite a lot of passive skills in the preoccupation of the sharpshooter. Yes, if the bullet hits accurately, it can cause a lot of damage without the need for shooting skills. At this moment, there was a lot of discussion in the audience. I have a feeling that I'm going to show off again. The head teacher of Class 5 was originally teaching sharpshooter-related coursework, but now, when he thought of the passive skill of passionate pursuit, he felt that the other party was going to show off. And watching Yunshin's posture of holding 2 guns, he inexplicably found a sense of familiarity that resonated with the gunman. Bang! It's too late, it's too soon. Gunshots have already been fired. Yunshin had already pulled the trigger. Here comes. It's going to be killed again. The moment Yunshin pulled the trigger. Bang! The muzzles of the 2 guns burst into a burst of gunpowder, and the deadly spiral bullets flew towards the enemy in the distance. Less than half a second. Poof! The sound of 2 bullets piercing through different skulls overlapped again. I saw two goblin figures rushing towards me, and under the impact of ammunition, their bodies flew out in a small reverse direction. And the skull was blown out. If you successfully shoot and hit the enemy, the passive ability, Passionate Pursuit, will be stacked with the first layer of killing intent, and the shooting speed and movement speed will be increased by 2%. If you successfully shoot and hit the enemy, the passive ability, Passionate Pursuit, will be superimposed on the second layer of killing intent, and the shooting speed and movement speed will be increased to 4%. Passionate Pursuit, C+. When the bullet hits, it can stack killing intent, up to 25 stacks, and generate up to 50% movement speed and rate of fire bonuses. Of course, thanks to the two quality improvements, when the full stack is full, it will also come with 45% armor penetration. Of course, as long as you leave the battle for 8 seconds, the accumulated killing intent will dissipate. I have to say that this passive skill does have a lot of chase meaning. Thanks to this passive skill, the sharpshooter has been one of the most popular classes for solo farming dungeons. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out one after another. Yanin, who was standing in place, kept pulling the trigger, and the goblins who kept coming forward and one after another narrowed the distance between them to within 5 or 6 meters. Yanin himself didn't even need to deliberately preview too much. The skulls continued to bloom and explode. It was enough to remind him of the great watermelons bursting and blooming from within, and the red and white filth spewed out. Of course, it can support Yanin's unscrupulous pile output. Thanks to its own summons, it has the output of the goblin mage in the front row. Less than a second. The two water spirits of pure elemental structure were completely bombarded by the spells in the back row. The 3 goblin summons were slaughtered to death by their own compatriots. The only remaining Thunder Eagle was extremely ruthless, still struggling alone, and when it swooped down, it grabbed a shaman into the air, flew to a high place, and released its claws, causing it to fall to the ground to death. The 20th layer of killing intent. The 21st level of killing intent. The 22nd layer of killing intent. The 25th layer of killing intent. After losing the sacrifice of the front row, at this moment, Yanin was already full of enthusiasm for 25 layers. Buzz. In a moment, a faint red luster lingered around him. The buffs of movement speed, attack speed, and armor piercing are undoubtedly pulled to the fullest. Under the lingering killing intent, Yanin's cold temperament inexplicably became more and more dangerous. The next second, he moved, just stepped on his left foot, and the moment his body started, an afterimage was slightly pulled. With this dodge, he threw all the multiple spell attacks that came from afar to the side at once. Hurry! So fast! After stepping on it in a few steps, the swift and shadowy Yanin even spanned more than 10 meters, and had already approached the goblin pile. The silver gun he held in his left hand was almost stuck into the other's mouth. Bang! The trigger was pulled, and the bullet at close range easily pierced the opponent's skull. Almost at the same moment, the goblin guard on the other side was thrown out. It turned out that Yanin's other gun was shot at the same time. Roar! The roaring goblin guards swung their swords at the approaching enemy. How do you know that the human figure that suddenly approached, with a step on it, the whole figure of the whole person floated back a few meters without anything, and instantly opened the distance between each other? Bang! Bang! But this distance is still the best range. There were 2 more heads, and the middle of the eyebrows was directly hit by a bullet and died. Click! Click! At this moment, 2 empty magazines had fallen from the guns to the ground. Now, the secret hidden in the belt is also revealed, and numerous magazines are placed inside. And Yanin's way of changing ammunition is also quite chic and sophisticated, and his hands are quickly filled at the same time, and he can't even see some clumsiness and trickiness. After the reload, his figure sped up again. Yanin used the speed skill so much so that he dragged out a series of afterimages. At such a speed, the natural dodge is full. All the blades, the flying bullets of light, and the bursts of irritable roars were all thrown behind. Soon, Yanin, who was tossing and turning, relied on his fast movement speed and had single-handedly killed the back row. Passive skills don't consume mana, and after such a long time, he only uses speed, relying more purely on his excellent body and nerve reactions to support his dodge and attack. Click! With a light step, he even made a sliding step and rapid fire effect. Like a roaming gunner on the second turn, He doesn't even forget to move and shoot while flickering, and the bullets on his guns are plunged into the enemy's head. It's not a skill, rather, it is purely physical to make the corresponding effect. Whoosh! Stacked with murderous intent, the cold bullets had terrifying armor-piercing power, constantly piercing through the mages' shields and barriers, and quickly taking the lives of these goblin mages. As the bullets whirled, the goblins' figures fell in denser and denser rows. Along with this, bullet casings continued to fall to the ground, and empty magazines were thrown out. When he first started training marksmanship, Yanin had been following the Mozambican shooting method he had learned in his previous life. It is a close-range shooting technique in which 2 shots are fired at the body of the target, followed by a quick shot in the head. The purpose of the first 2 shots is naturally to hit the enemy faster and more accurately. After all, it is much easier to hit the body than to hit the head, and this is enough to make the enemy lose his ability to move for a short time. In the short interval between the opponent and the inability to resist, quickly shoot the opponent in the head, destroying the opponent's brain structure and killing them. The protagonist of Fast Pursuit relies on this set of precision marksmanship to kill all over the world. Yanin likes this extreme marksmanship full of violent beauty very much, and naturally begins to learn it. His control over his body is meticulous. After all, his physical strength is also beyond the cognitive level of anyone in his previous life. Combined with his own talented combat instincts, he doubled his body and turned his head at the beginning. But it didn't take long to train, and he went straight to the body. And now, he directly held 2 guns and shot his head within 5 or 6 meters. The 25 layers of killing intent stacked with enthusiasm, combined with the speed skill and the 40 agility attribute of his own, make his figure very fast and ghostly. Striving to kill with 1 blow, the figure quickly arrived in the front row, and 1 bullet after another was almost pressed into the opponent's head and penetrated into it. When the brilliant torrent of spells came into view, he stepped on it, and the whole person quickly retreated several meters, dodging a bunch of angry counterattacks. As for some of the enemy's tracking magic bullets, they were easily dodged by him with a sliding step rapid fire. The tracking bullet passed by, and the difference was a millimeter, and it was 1,000 miles wrong. In any case, it is difficult to fall on him. When the 2 empty magazines were thrown out again, and after the rapid reloading and reloading, the figure that came and went freely rushed into the monster pile again. Holding the gun in both hands, it is like opening the museau mowing grass, and the muzzle of the gun is wantonly bursting with fireworks, and the gun is deadly, killing all the goblins. The enemy's speed is rapidly decreasing at a rate visible to the human eye. And the goblin shamans wielded their bone staffs, causing them to quickly go berserk and frantically counterattack this incomparably arrogant enemy. Maybe it's the relationship between high and low class. In a fit of rage, these shamans and mages sent magical attacks even to the guards in order to kill the human. The pressure of survival is full again. It's just that, at this time, Yanin had already recovered from the blue returning technique, and most of the magic power that was empty in his body had been reversed. Roll. A pre-primer skill for a martial artist. This small skill directly caused Yanin to roll sideways, and dodged a furious sky-falling fire. The area where he landed just now was directly affected by several guards, and his bones were directly melted by the ultra-high temperature fireworks. And the range of magic unleashed by the red goblins has not stopped. Seeing another stream of fire falling down like a meteorite in midair, Yanin stepped forward and directly released the sharpshooter's knee impact. Bang! The poor goblin was kicked into the air by Yanin's volley, catching the falling fire head on, acting as a substitute for the dead on the spot, and his body exploded in midair. And in the midst of the strange pile, Yanin, who was under siege, had not stopped this series of offensives. At this moment, Yanin was dancing on the tip of a knife. It's a pity that no matter how fierce the attack is, it is constantly dodged by his ghostly and swift pace. After the sliding dodge, his soaring figure can even easily make an aerial shot. It was obviously under siege, but there was no trace of panic. It's like a leisurely stroll, relaxed and freehand, but it is dodging and fighting back. The wounds on his body were not a little, and after a few seconds, the tide of the enemy's offensive was declining more and more, but he was killed by the bullet that missed the bullet and the bullet of the gun and shot the head. At this moment, the monsters in the palace became more and more sparse and no longer so dense. Yanin, who was at ease, even came to a fighter's sliding shovel at the moment of reloading, shoveling the guards who rushed forward into the air. In less than half a second, after the bullet is quickly reloaded, it will make up for an accurate headshot to the falling figure. This chic, this control of combat skills, is enough to make people feel breathtaking. In fact, Yunshin's wanton and crazy spear slaughter feast had already triggered another wave of screams and revelry outside. That's too accurate, gun headshots belong to. Before that, when they saw the unemployed scattered man with 2 guns on the screen start the slaughter show, the teachers and students immediately sighed. I'm really proficient in marksmanship. This is a good seedling of a sharpshooter. Under the cover of the summons, the scattered people who stood on the stake did not shoot a single shot at all, and they also shot their heads with guns. It's a training robot, it's so accurate, and this headshot shooting method is still right in the center of the eyebrows, impartial, and too accurate. It's no wonder that the head teacher of the 5th class who teaches the profession of sharpshooter directly clenched his fists excitedly. All 25 rounds hit. Ardent pursuit and killing, 25 layers of killing intent have been stacked. He immediately paid attention to the fluctuations around Yunshin's body on the screen, and accurately judged the state gain that Yunshin had obtained at this moment. The summon was gone, there was no cover, and he began to move. It's fast. The 50% movement speed bonus, combined with its own agility attributes, is indeed beyond most people's imagination. What's even more unimaginable is that it is Yunshin's accuracy that shows the master's demeanor under mobile shooting. The most outrageous thing is that you can come and go freely when you can kill into the monster pile single-handedly, dodging attacks frantically while dodging and moving, and at the same time, you can pull the trigger and constantly fight back. One by one, the shells were thrown into the air, and the bells fell to the ground with a rhythmic sound. The skillful and quick reload of both hands, pushing the bullet to load, does not seem to be dragging in the slightest, and no action is superfluous. The crowd held their breath and calmed down, but the rhythmic gunfire had already made everyone feel their blood boiling. It's like watching a Hollywood blockbuster that is in full swing, and if it weren't for the wrong occasion, they would be eager to applaud and clap. Now, the teachers and students who reprimanded Yunshin for his recklessness before were somewhat dumbfounded. The teacher's expressions were also a little incredulous. I didn't expect it. He actually dragged back the vacuum period of Huilin in this way as a sharpshooter. Awesome. Is there really him? Is it also in his plan? No wonder he is so reckless. No, he is brave and strategic. Principal Fang, who was in the middle of the head, was lighthearted, and he didn't have the attitude of reprimanding just now. It stands to reason that ordinary people have long felt that they have no place to be ashamed, and some are difficult to be calm, and thin-skinned people are eager to burrow into the ground. This Principal Fang was before Quandang's words, but he praised it on the spot. Jin Sheng, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help but sigh. Principal Fang's face was indeed not ordinarily thick. Soon, the hearts of the crowd became more and more immersed. His blue amount is estimated to have recovered a lot, and the amount of blue consumed by small skills is much smaller. As a teacher said, 2 or 3 minutes of gunfight baptism does not consume any physical magic, and purely relies on one's own movement and bullets to cause damage. Now that so much time has passed since the blue technique, it will inevitably restore the magic power in his body. The voice just fell. Here, I'm familiar with this move, it's a martial artist's primary skill, rolling. The man on the screen easily dodged a one-hit area attack. Next, there is the sliding step of the marksman, and even a shot in the air, which does not forget to counterattack and shoot back between dodges, and hit the enemy to the ground. There are just too many small displacement skills. That's the advantage of being a jobless person. The advantages of unemployed people are vividly demonstrated at this moment. Hundreds of primary abilities are simply emerging in an endless stream across the profession. Noticed? This senior Yun prefers small displacement skills, and he doesn't want some elementary skills of sharpshooters, such as gunpowder sputtering, which has never appeared until now. Gunpowder splashing is a splash range ability. One shot can deal a wide area of damage, and most sharpshooters will spend skill points. But maybe it's because the splash is not lethal enough, so this Yunshin doesn't like it. He clearly likes the feeling of being in control, and the constant blue consumption of gunpowder sputters is a serious conflict with his playstyle. Ah, the domineering man who controls everything, it's my favorite man. The students were communicating below, but they were soon completely deviated by a sentence from a female classmate. Although many people don't want to admit it, a man with a slender and tall figure and a handsome and resolute appearance is indeed attractive. Especially the extreme slaughter feast where the blade danced just now brought out a cold, ruthless, domineering and sharp temperament. And the next scene in front of him caused a bunch of to shout loudly. I saw that the man who was the focus of the audience gave the attacking goblin guard a sliding shovel at the moment of reloading, shoveling it into the air. When the new magazine is reloaded, in less than half a second, it will make up for a precise headshot to the monster figure that fell from the sky. Wow, too handsome, so handsome. Help, let me die under his gun. I announced that he was my new husband. I have to say, this is really handsome. The male classmates could only smile bitterly, but they silently remembered this set of moves in their hearts. Why didn't I expect such a cool cooperation? The students in the audience seemed a little lively. But the teachers were talking about Yunshin's backpack space. He didn't have any medicine with him, either a bullet or a mechanic's device. It seems that yes, he has the priest's healing technique and blue return technique, and he has never drunk a bottle of medicine from beginning to end. That's not right. In fact, he hadn't even used healing. Anyway, the teachers were somewhat silent. Even if they were under the same level of dungeons, few of them dared not bring a bottle of potion, and even cleared the dungeon without receiving the priest's treatment. The movement of this cloud are very exquisite. There are a bunch of small displacement skills, and when I beat the goblin Centurion, I saw that he still has a lot of small control skills. From beginning to end, I wasn't hurt by a monster. In addition, Yunshin's backpack space is also another focus of the teachers. In this world, as long as you reach level 10, you can get 5 backpack spaces. It's just that each space can only hold the same type of items, and there is a specified capacity, so it's not okay to put too much. And the contents of Yunshin's backpack are also thorough. The capacity of one block of space can hold up to 15 magazines, and looking at the amount of bullets on the ground, he estimated that all 3 blocks of space had magazines, and the other 2 contained traps and dangerous devices that the mechanic would use. Looking at it this way, Yunshin is indeed very confident, and he will go to the copy without medicine. It is worth mentioning that since it is the college entrance examination, some illegal drugs are not allowed in the backpack space. For example, drugs that can instantly restore vitality and magic power are prohibited. The potions taken can only be strictly limited to 2 normal potions. In addition, there are many prohibited contents in the college entrance examination, ranging from bullet specification restrictions to weapon grade quality. The rest is garbage time. The act of dancing on the blade alone has ended, and there are sparse goblin mobs left in the palace, which are just normal sweeps for Yunshin. Simple, effortless, and risk-free. But the atmosphere that suddenly relaxed made Principal Fang, who was in the middle of the audience, inexplicably nervous. Jin Sheng, who was sitting on the side, only felt strange. Principal Fang, what's wrong? Come on, Yunshin. What's even more surprising is that Principal Fang, who was still calm and light-skinned before, began to mumble quietly, and his eyes kept focusing on Yunshin on the screen, without slacking his attention at all. There is only one last level left, and there is to impact the champion. After a little bit from the teaching director next to him, Jin Sheng immediately realized. He had been worrying about Yunshin just now, whether he would be too risky and whether his body would be injured. For a while, I didn't expect that my love would rush through the level faster than I imagined. This is what I gave up rest and worked hard before. Impact champion. This is a fact that Jin Sheng did not dare to imagine in the past. Because it's so hard. The best result in the history of Dongyun High School since its establishment is only the 8th place in the province, but there is a gap between it and the champion of the year, and the same difficulty is a full 2 minutes and 05 seconds. Now Yunshin's performance has refreshed the cognition of all teachers, which is indeed a very stable demeanor. It's no wonder that Principal Fang, who has always been calm and deep-skinned, finally couldn't stabilize his emotions at this moment. Not many people remember who the second is, but if it is the first and takes off the champion, it is definitely a person who has attained the Tao, and the chicken dog ascends to heaven. Especially this year's college entrance examination is such a special year, testing the first batch of achievements of 10 years of compulsory education, which is a milestone in an absolute sense. If he wins the champion, the principal of the other party will have to eat a piece of the pie with the least to say, and he will leave his name in history. But at the moment when the principal was extremely excited, the invigilator made the holographic screen cut 1.5 screens. Just when all the teachers and students didn't know why, everyone stared, and many people were shocked and broke out in a cold sweat, but it was a student who was killed by a goblin. Ah! Some students died in the copy. The sudden cutout of the half of the screen immediately caused a lot of panic. I saw a young junior high school student at the second level, and he was chopped into blood foam by an axe from the oncoming goblin Centurion. This is the first student to be fatal, and this may not be the first. Oh my god. Before he could choose to return to the city scroll, he was directly interrupted from the moment of chanting and was killed by the boss. Sure enough, this is the real high school entrance examination room. Once you die in a dungeon, unfortunately this does not give you the option to resurrect. To die is to return to the promised land. In addition to the pain, everyone did not have too much fear. Since 70 years of world changes and demonic disasters have raged, the entire Earth has long been pulled into an era of turbulence and chaos. The previous cross-era game of the Divine Domain was just an advance rehearsal given to all mankind by the will of the Earth. After that, the game data began to overlap with reality, the surface area of the Earth expanded tens of thousands of times, the real space was no longer stable, many cracks were created, and the door to the secret realm and the small world appeared. The gates of this different space are interconnected, and if they are not dealt with in time, the monsters inside will emerge. 20 years ago, the spatial rift in the Ghost City was not dealt with in a timely manner, so that the orc army poured in from it, and the entire city fell into a great catastrophe. And the famous author Lao Zhe was the survivor of the Ghost City tragedy that year. So when he retired from the Iron Army and joined the Education Bureau, his style of writing questions was quite difficult. Only by facing the real calamity can we know that life is not easy. Lao Zhe's educational philosophy is undoubtedly to put an end to being a weak and incompetent sheep, but to strive to be a wild wolf with sharp claws all the time. Brother Yun was so powerful that we forgot that the questions in this exam were very difficult. Yes, Senior Yun is about to reach the 4th level of the dungeon, and this person is still not long after entering the 2nd level, and something happened soon. The extreme movement of dancing on the blade like Yunshin did before, without a single injury, and quickly snatching the time to clear the level, is simply a special case. For the general public, most of the next copies of normalcy are steady, one step at a time. Those with poor psychological quality may be trembling, fearful, and unable to take a step for half a day. At this time, they may not be long in the 2nd level. Copies of the nightmare difficulty are naturally different from the easy difficulty. The pressure to survive is greatly reduced. Even the guardian boss Goblin Centurion has been reduced to level 10, and the wide-range skill of War Trample will not be. It's just that for some people, it's still a bit difficult. From the first casualty appeared, the casualty toll at Shinonome High School began to expand. The screen of the Bronze Gate gives a lot of close-ups of death. Some people may think that this is very excessive. But now, under the teacher's reminder, the 1st and 2nd year of high school students have begun to seriously remember what is the reason why these college entrance examination candidates can't support it. It was a valuable experience. It is also a precious material that others have exchanged for death and blood. It's the Centurion again, and after the charge was launched, he directly knocked the senior who couldn't hide into a bloody. Damn the boss, it's really hard. At this moment, everyone remembered how Yunshin had dealt with the Goblin Centurion. The moment the boss charged, it was interrupted by the mechanic's primary skill, Entrap. But it's so hard to interrupt skills. The moment you can only charge and start, after the skill is completely released, the boss will activate the overlord state, and it is basically difficult to be stumped by the primary skill. Therefore, the gap between the two may be less than half a second, or even shorter, before the charge is activated and the hegemonic effect is produced. The grasp of timing is really too testing. If you are not careful, you will stand in place and become a pile to be collided with. Brother Yun's problem-solving ideas are not suitable for our, at all. That's genius. That's something that only a man with a unique fighting instinct would dare to do. Dodge, if your agility is not enough, use the small displacement skill. After the Centurion charge is launched, immediately avoid its edge, don't choose to fight hard. At this time, the teacher taught them at the right time and provided them with the only solution. If it is also handed over to these people according to Yunshin's method of dealing with the boss, I am afraid that the entire class will not know how many people will survive in the future. Someone came out. At this moment, in front of the Bronze Gate in the middle of the examination room, a figure was teleported. Someone used the return scroll to successfully break away from the dungeon. Sorry, I failed. Poof. The man fell to his knees and buried his head and wept. If you fail to clear the customs, it means that you will come again in the next session, or you can choose a relevant sub-occupation to apply for the cultural college by virtue of your liberal arts results. Of course, if you are lucky, there may be colleges that are not satisfied with the enrollment quota to recruit students on the basis of merit. There have been a lot of such lucky cases in previous sessions. Hey! The head teacher of the first class of rocket class sighed. Although this student is in the lower reaches of the class, if this person is in the key class, he is also a stable top 3 existence. Soon. The death toll has jumped to double digits on the screen, officially breaking 10. And more injured people can't clear the dungeon, and they directly hit the wall in the second level, can't face the boss, and directly choose to leave the dungeon. Less than 5 minutes. The number of people who left the dungeon alone has climbed to more than 100 people. On the other side of the examination room, a medical aid station had been designed, and I saw that several teachers who were teaching the priest's course came forward and healed the wounded. Among them, there was even the director of treatment from Shinonome Hospital. With a light lift of his hand, the surging healing magic even brought a severed arm of a student back to life. This scene surprised the candidates. It did seem like it was a bit difficult. We all fell in the second level. Don't comfort me, I've done my best to. Me too, in fact, I'm also very satisfied. If it weren't for the 10 years of free compulsory education in Xuanlong country, I might only be able to do some chores in the countryside, and now I can still choose to engage in clerical-related work. After all, is a sub-career also a broad road? Many high school juniors who quit the stage were not so sad as they imagined. After all, if it weren't for the state's free education support, giving every student the opportunity to upgrade to level 10 and giving everyone the opportunity to change jobs, they would not have been able to go this far. Talent is really limited. Hey, I'm ashamed to educate the country. Now you can consider a sub-career. Don't be sad, many key universities also have sub-vocational colleges, and you can also get ahead. The main profession eats experience. The sub-profession also has to eat experience. It's just that the way to upgrade the latter is not only to kill the light upgrade, but also to upgrade through production, reading, learning, comprehension, etc. Among them, there are many types of sub-occupations. Druggist, alchemist, blacksmith, enchanter, disintegrator, beast tamer, jeweler, sewinger, chef and many. There are many types, many of which are reflected in the production department and the collection department, so it is no wonder that the sub-profession is called a life occupation and a social occupation. Don't look at it as just a sub-career, but for many real families, if the child can have relevant sub-professional talents, it is just a good favor. After all, those who major in the minor profession basically don't have to go to the front line to fight monsters. And in the last 10 years, the social status of sub-professions such as pharmacists, alchemists, and enchanters has become higher and higher. Dongyun's local pharmaceutical company has a market value of more than 100 billion, and its chairman is a well-known pharmaceutical master. If the child has a pharmaceutical talent or above B qualification, enchantment talent, etc., he can even ignore any combat results. As long as the cultural score is passed, he can directly receive an admission letter from a university or college. From this point of view, if you can't get through the combat profession, the path of the sub-profession is also a broad road. As the old saying goes, all roads lead to Rome. If you become the boss in the future, don't forget your classmates. That being said, in their hearts, the senior high school students who withdrew from the exam are still very envious of those students who are still struggling in the copy. After all, they are still able to hold on to their dreams. Moreover, the center of the world's status, the center of the stage, still falls on the combat profession. The world depends on them to keep afloat. They are the pride of the future. What about the two Wen brothers? The man of the year in the rocket class is none other than the Wen twin brothers. Before this, the two were regarded as the future stars of Dongyun High School and the star candidates for the school's historical achievements. Dongyun High School has poured a lot of effort and cultivation into these two geniuses. It's just, since the dropouts had taken their seats, the surrounding audience had not discussed anything about the two brothers. On the contrary, what are the words of unemployed scattered people, guns and guns headshots, combat all-rounders, swordsmanship geniuses, and so on from the younger brothers and sisters in the rear? Huh? What is this? Sanren? Why do people still choose to play Sanren? Isn't this a show? Everyone didn't go too deep into the words, just took them as jokes. The swordsmanship genius is talking about Dewen, That is, the elder brother, the swordsman profession. I heard that the two-handed sword is very good. The gun headshot should be Xiao Wen, the old sharpshooter. I heard that he decided to roam the gunner after the second turn. It stands to reason that the results of this college entrance examination may really be Xiao Wen winning the first place in the school. De Wen and Xiao Wen are twin brothers, and they are not equal in strength. It's just that the sharpshooter is better than the swordsman in a single brush copy. But well, the sharpshooter is also more position-oriented, detail-oriented, and inferior to the swordsman profession in terms of error tolerance. The return is high risk, and it is really hard to say which of the two brothers will take the first. At this time, other dropouts who had recovered from treatment also sat down one after another. Talking to each other, without exception, they were all curious and concerned about how the twins were. The holographic screen projected in midair does not give any picture, and the multiple screens cut out are given the first perspective of the failure to clear the level or the casualties. It seems that now we are sharing the experience of failure. In addition, they didn't expect that the first and second year high school students didn't care about the school's future stars at all, but many people's faces looked very anxious. These juniors and sisters, I don't know who they are as an example. And his face is impetuous, and his mind is uncertain, which is the place where he has learned the lessons of failure, and what has become of it. The crowd shook their heads. It's really not as good as one session. I'm in a hurry. Damn. I'm also in a hurry. This juncture actually entered the failure lesson sharing session, and the picture is all gone. The voices of the juniors and sisters in the back have become louder and louder. Gradually, like a vegetable market. Hurry, it's too much of a rush. It's like watching the highest, climactic clips of the entire Hollywood film, suddenly being snatched away and transferred to an educational channel to share your experience. Anger and corruption are naturally indispensable. I can't bear it. I can't bear it. At this time, Senior Yun has definitely cleaned up all the monsters in the palace in the third level. It's time to enter the last level. Everyone wants to see how this jobless, scattered man copes with the boss of the last level. Outcome. Share the lessons of failure and still don't change the channel. Boom. At this time, a junior finally roared. Invigilator, change the desk. That's it, we're going to see Senior Yun. Leave the lessons of failure to share later. Let's watch Brother Yun's performance in the last battle. Change the channel. RNM, change the channel. Someone took the lead, and suddenly one stone stirred up 1,000 waves. The entire back row onlookers shouted for the invigilator to immediately cut the screen to Senior Yun. And so on. Senior Yun, Brother Yun, who are these people? The senior high school students who couldn't pass the customs were full of confusion, and they couldn't even figure out what the situation was now. Slowly, Xiao Wen actually appeared in front of the bronze gate, and he also failed. At this point in time, no matter how powerful the school is, they can only just enter the third level. Therefore, seeing Xiao Wen appear outside the bronze gate, he would not make the customs clearance side associate at all, and immediately knew that something happened to this rising star who was pinned on by Shinonome High School. It's over. It turned out to be a small, of sharpshooter profession. This year, Shinonome High School should continue to sink. I'm sorry, teacher. I was reckless, and under the huge consumption of mana, in order to compete for the time to clear the level, I entered the third level without waiting for recovery, and the result was Xiao Wen, who was injured and quit, had a painful look on his face, and he didn't dare to look up at the head teacher of the first class at all. In the third level, there were a large number of spell units, and the AoE range damage was full, which suddenly put him in a predicament when he was empty of mana. In the end, he lost his physical strength and was unable to lift his gun due to his arm injury, so he chose to quit the dungeon. Hey, quote. Knowing that his proud protege was so risky and reckless, the head teacher of the first class sighed silently, and at the same time, his face was also very complicated. It's a pity that Xiao Wen failed to hit the school history record, and he also messed up the college entrance examination this time. And the reason for his complicated face is that he is not easy to blame. Because the equally reckless, unemployed man has already cleared the third level. He was unscrupulous with 2 guns and opened a slaughtering feast with no magic power. In comparison, his proud protege. Compare the goods, but you can't compare. Hey, this sigh was not a pity for not snatching the pride of heaven from under Jin Sheng's hands. Hurry up and give all the pictures to Yunshin. You don't need to go through the process of sharing your failure experience, Invigilator, quick, now. change the channel for me right away. This moment. The deafening words came from the center of the audience. This man. But it's Principal Fang. Seeing that the first seed, who was regarded as the most dramatic by the school before, was out, he was so anxious in his heart, and he didn't know what Yunshin was in it. The damn invigilator is still slowly following the procedure, which makes Principal Fang anxious. This is. What's the matter? Why is Principal Fang so excited? All the students who sat down just now were stupid. Why rush him, Yunshin? If you want to say that the younger students in the first and second years of high school can't hold their breath, it's good to say, how can it be the turn of Principal Fang, who has always been lighthearted, suddenly has an impatient temperament and urges wildly? Yunshin, it seems to be the top student of the third class. It turns out that Brother Yun, Senior Yun called him. Something is wrong. What happened to this person all of a sudden? Why did he suddenly overshadow the Wen twins? The crowd was puzzled. Not far away, half kneeling on the ground, Xiao Wen, who had never dared to raise his head to face everyone, suddenly stood up. As the future son of the school, the star candidate, who is considered the #1 first-seeded candidate, suffered such a major defeat that he did not dare to raise his head to look at the others. Because he was afraid to see those eyes full of anticipation and loss. He failed everyone, lived up to the cultivation of the entire Shinonome High School. He was even afraid to hear the cheering and encouragement of his younger students, because it would make him even more embarrassed. The results. He had already done a good job of psychological construction, but he didn't see the expected scene. All of them simply ignore themselves. It's like you're insignificant, and it's not important at all. What's going on? This kind of ignorance and neglect is even more hurtful than that kind of lost gaze. Teacher, this. Xiao Wen looked at his homeroom teacher, puzzled by what was written on his face. Don't say it yet, come and sit down with me and watch the last level of Yunshin together. The head teacher didn't have much time to explain, because the battle was poised to start, and he wanted to watch the final battle carefully. Whether this level can be done well determines the ownership of the champion. Except for those dropouts who have just sat down, every audience knows that this last level of the boss battle is likely to be a historic scene. The invigilator was naturally reasonable, and soon, the holographic screen projected in midair officially returned to the perspective of, on that man. Here comes. The last boss fight. Goblin Dungeon, the palace of the third level. In the pool of blood flowing all over the ground, bullet casings were dotted on it, and there were many black bullet clips mixed with them. The corpse of a goblin lay all over the palace, strewn all over the field, bleeding and drifting. In the midst of this, only a human figure survived alone. One of the short guns he was holding had been thrown away. Weapons have a service life. Excessive push to load, too much pull of the trigger, all of which completely blew up the entire chamber of the gun. The short spear of this black iron quality weapon was basically completely scrapped. Even the only other gun left is too much wear and tear, and it is still hot, and it is estimated that if there are less than 10 more shots, it will definitely blow up completely. You've done your job. Yunshin sighed. In the last one-sided harvesting stage, he didn't use much magic at all, and even saved a lot of small displacement skills. Under the continuous replenishment and recovery of the blue restoration technique, the mana accumulation in the entire human body is at least 80%. It's the last level. At the end of the palace, a bronze gate greets you. Squeak. Without a moment's hesitation, or even a break, Yunshin completely pushed the last bronze door open. Compared to the first level, the long and straight underground passage. The second level is a vast underground hall. The third level is a magnificent underground palace. Step by step, the first scene seen in the fourth level is, but it was a tall giant shadow sitting on an equally huge stone pedestal. The atmosphere here is dark and gloomy, and there is not much light. Now that the bronze door was opened, the light from the outside illuminated the goblin giant's figure. Perhaps stimulated by the light, the giant figure sleeping on the stone seat finally opened its eyes. A pair of blood-red eyes are so cold and seeping, just looking at them makes people feel like they are in a sea of blood. Human. This is not a place for you to invade. Come, die. As he spoke, the figure of the giant, who sat on a great stone pedestal, stood up. He shuddered slightly, and the dust that had fallen from his slumber slid down his knotted muscles. The silver armor that was draped even had a cloak, dragged behind, and the whole body was dark red, like a pool of blood. Yunshin raised his eyebrows slightly, and looked at this monster that almost stood up from the sky with interest in his eyes. Can a goblin still be able to speak words that he can understand? Before that, even a centurion could only speak a language he didn't understand. Now, can this goblin giant speak and understand human speech? It's kind of interesting. Under the observation of the general skill identification technique, the information of the last boss in front of me also came out. Monster. Goblin Commander. Level 16. Qualification: Gold Star. Skill. Note: the scarlet cloak is the symbol of the Goblin Clan's commander. Identification is not a panacea. In the case of a grade difference, a mark will appear on the key information. However, Yunshin's identification skills are also much stronger than others, and according to guesses, it should be that the skill information of the final boss is deliberately hidden. This is also part of the customs clearance assessment, which adds a layer of difficulty. About it, Yunshin didn't care at all. After entering the state of battle spirit, he put the scepter weapon in his hand into the backpack space that was already 2 squares empty. Naturally, he didn't plan to fight the enemy empty-handed. Along the way, the war gun on his back can be unused from beginning to end. In Yunshin's initial tactical arrangement, his war gun was used to attack fortified positions, and it was also specially used to deal with bosses. Because at the moment, in close quarters combat, the most powerful explosive skills he has are all with the war gun. Now let me see how long you can hold on. The next second is less. The spear wrapped in a gray oil paper bag had fallen into his right hand. You survive for a maximum of 20 seconds, and only survive for 20 seconds. Anyway, the warrior monk's primary professional skill, blood explosion, had already bathed Yunshin's body with a blood-colored luster. Bloodburst C+, within 20 seconds, all of his stats increased by 80%, and his attack speed, movement speed, and armor penetration increased by 75%. After 20 seconds, the buff has no effect, and the body is weakened, and all stats drop to only 25%, which lasts for a full 3 minutes. In other words, this is a desperate gamble. If you can't get the boss in 20 seconds, the unlucky person is him. It's just that Yunshin's black and white clear eyes have a hint of gambler's madness, but they are so sober and assertive. Coming. It's open, outside. When the perspective of the big screen fell on Yunshin's body again, the audience behind was suddenly extremely excited. At this moment, there is a good chance that they will witness history. What a big boss, a bigger position than a centurion. Even if you are mentally prepared, it is still a little suffocating to look at the huge body that wants to hold up the sky. Brother Yun actually took back the scepter. He finally picked up the war spear. Is this the last weapon he wants to perform? No one expected that at this last critical moment, this all-rounder who was excellent at swordsmanship, assassination, magic, and magic spear would actually use a war spear. However, the next scene made their faces change dramatically. Wait. Brother Yun, is this going berserk when you come up? This seems to be a warrior monk's blood explosion. There are quite a few skills that have a berserk effect. The excitement injection of the mechanic's profession. The rage of the ghost swordsman class. Even the skill, magic boiling, which is rare in the mage class, has a berserk effect. Of course, the berserk buff does not stack. Now this unemployed man is using the blood explosion of the warrior monk. But this is wrong. How can you come to the door and open the berserk? At this moment, not to mention the students, even the teachers were a little confused. Everyone seemed a little overwhelmed, even a little lost. Even if it's a textbook that has been adapted many times, there is no example of going berserk just after facing the boss. On the contrary, it is an absolute mistake and is prohibited. Why? Because after the end of the rage, the body is absolutely in a state of weakness, and at that time, if the boss doesn't die, isn't it just being slaughtered? It's over. Wouldn't that be too aggressive? Principal Fang's face turned pale all of a sudden, and he only felt that his blood pressure, which had been stable for many years, suddenly rose rapidly. At this moment, he only felt that he needed blood pressure medication. At this critical moment, the furious figure on the screen has already rushed to the figure who walked down from the stone seat. The towering giant figure had stepped down from the stone seat. Every step that fell, the space trembled a little, and it made people wonder if the dome on his head would collapse if this guy had moved a little more. The slender and sturdy human figure in front of him did not have the slightest fear. At this moment, Yunshin's eyes had become deeper and deeper, his spirit gradually became ethereal, and his battle consciousness was highly concentrated. At the moment after the blood explosion was turned on, the slender figure bathed in blood-colored luster took a step directly, and the entire body even disappeared in place as if teleporting at this moment. Huh! At this moment, the goblin commander, who was staring at this scene from a distance, frowned, and immediately felt that this human mole ant was stronger than he imagined. Not so fast. Just as he was about to raise the stone axe in his hand to block, the figure in front of him pulled out a series of afterimages, suddenly shook the war spear in his hand. Sigh. Seeing the behavior of vibrating the spear, the gray oiled paper bag wrapped in the entire slender body of the spear was suddenly thrown forward with precision. It's not. The goblin commander's face was pale, and he saw that the oiled paper bag that had been completely stretched out in the air had completely blocked his eyes. At this moment, he had completely lost the other party's vision. Didn't care too much, he immediately instinctively defended, subconsciously waved the battle axe clenched in his right hand, and directly swept with a blow. The huge wind pressure suddenly erupted forward, and the terrifying edge of the wind blade also completely shredded the oiled paper bag that blocked the view at once. But unexpectedly, the blow in front of him swept thousands of troops, and it didn't sweep the other party at all. And that's not all. The figure of the other party has since disappeared in front of him. Slow down. Where did he go? As soon as this consciousness emerged, a sharp pain instantly surged into my mind from the foot of my right leg. Poof! I saw an extremely sharp wound suddenly bloom from the side of the commander's right leg, and blood sprayed out like a blowout. Maybe it was because of the hamstring injury. The goblin commander only felt that his right leg was inexplicably weak, and the whole person's huge body was inexplicably tilted, completely losing the center of gravity of his body. The reason why he was suddenly injured turned out to be that under the shaking of this hand of oil paper bag, Yunshin's figure came to another speed, halfway. Moreover, under the attack of the other party sweeping thousands of troops, a beautiful, sliding shovel directly dodged the attack. Is even in the blind corner of the opponent's line of sight, taking advantage of the situation on the opponent's leg that is not protected by the armor, he uses the blade to cut a large injury gap. This is a beautiful first blow, and Yunshin's figure has also come to the back of the commander boss. Roar! At this moment, the commander who had been teased at the beginning was extremely angry and irritable. His entire figure had already been bathed in a surging fluctuation of chi, and the fine gravel under his feet was suspended in the air under this anger. This is like opening some high-level guardian skill, so that the body and armor around him have become more and more solid. It's just that Yunshin didn't give him any chance to speak of. The figure behind him didn't stop at all, and the war gun in his hand slammed into the lower plate of the opponent's back. Pick up. A warrior's primary skill that is too ordinary to be ordinary can no longer be ordinary, but it interrupts the skill of the commander. It's just that very few fighters play well. Like Yunshin, the operation of interrupting skills by picking up is also very few people are proficient. It's not a game. In order to successfully lift the target unit into the air, two conditions sometimes need to be met. 1. The strength attribute must not be weak, and there must be no big disparity with the enemy, otherwise you will not have enough strength. 2. Even if each other's strength is equal, once the enemy's body is out of balance and cannot grasp the sense of gravity, it is easy to be provoked. Sorry. Both conditions are met. His 4-dimensional data is already top-notch, and he has a blood explosion buff, and now the enemy has been hit by him, and his body is completely unbalanced. Therefore, it is naturally easy to pick and fly. Bang! The war spear that was against the opponent's back was as tight as a longbow, and under the imbalance of the body, the huge physique was actually picked up into the air by Yunshin, who had no good strength at all. Levitation combo. He glared at the ground with his footsteps, soared into the air, and without saying a word, took advantage of the victory to pursue, and used another beginner skill of the warrior. Floating combo, C+. When you hit an enemy in the air, each subsequent combo will increase damage by 45%, and the final blow will explode with an 80% damage bonus. This is a beginner skill that is difficult for ordinary people to get started and master. After all, it is very common for people to reach the conditions for flying the enemy into the air first. On top of that, it's hard to make combos while you're in the air. But I'm sorry, for now, this is the most powerful burst output ability in Yunshin's hand. In a flash, the gun is like a dragon. Yunshin's arms swung rapidly, and a little bit of cold light was wrapped in boundless impact power, and it frantically penetrated towards the figure that was picked up and flew into the air. Poof! 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 The figure that was picked up in the air was not only interrupted by his skills, but also in midair, and he had no backhand power at all. Yanin, who rose into the air, could be said to be unscrupulous in output, and the war spear in his hand was like an incomparably sharp light thorn, constantly bombarding the huge body in front of him. Hits. Double combo. Triple hit. 5-hit combo. The time spent in the air is very short. Even with Yanin's current physical fitness, there is nothing to rely on under his feet, and he still has to output desperately with a weapon in his hand. It will naturally not last long. When the center of gravity of his body was about to fall, Yanin, who was highly concentrated, stabbed out the 6th shot with the war spear in his hand. Less than 2 seconds. Levitating 6 combos. In the last blow, the power condensed with the highest damage suddenly erupted from the tip of the spear, and pierced through the opponent's heart. Each blow of the floating combo grows more and more violent. The damage stacks up by 45% gradually, and the last hit triggers an 80% damage bonus. Boom! This moment was like a shock, and the entire space was shaken. The goblin commander, who was unable to defend himself, received the most painful blow, only to see that the last shot had pierced through his silver armor. The extremely sharp spear was even more powerful, and it pierced the other party's heart. Under the bombardment of this huge force, this poor boss flew into the distance like a cannonball. The huge momentum broke the stone pillars behind it one after another, and only after plowed a chasm in the ground did it stop the momentum of the fall. Yanin, who was unforgiving, didn't stop his steps at all. The moment he landed in midair, he directly launched the warrior's primary skill, charge. The whole body was bathed in blood-colored luster, and with the effect of charging straight forward, it was like a blood wave rushing forward. Roar! The battered goblin captain roared in pain. There were at least 6 large blood holes on his body, and the silver armor he was wearing had already been shattered, leaving only some fragments that had not slipped from his body. Even his own skull seems to be missing a small half, as if it has been eaten by someone. At this moment, he was covered in blood, covered in scaly wounds, like a ghost, and only one of his intact eyeballs stared at the charging figure. Even with such a serious injury, the battle axe in his hand was still clenched. Following the instinct of his body and gathering strength, the commander, who was lying on the ground and unable to stand up and resist, could only be forced to fight back. Phew! Another sweep, illuminated by the light, like an arc of moonlight, splashed in front of him. At this scene, it was as if the charging figure crashed into the sharp blade and crashed into the blade itself. It's just... Who would have thought that the figure that was bathed in blood and charged would actually stop the momentum of the forward rush? Ho! With a low shout, Yanin clenched the spear with both hands and actually made a blocking posture. Block. Warriors, swordsmen, ghost swordsmen, etc., are elementary skills that can be learned by many melee physics classes. Chang. The crisp sound of the clashing of soldiers resounded in my ears. After all, the commander was severely wounded, and his strength was hindered. And Yanin is bathed in blood, and his momentum is still at its peak. After less than half a second, the scales were broken in an instant as his hands shook gently forward. Affected by this blocking counterattack, the goblin commander was even more numb in his arm, and the tomahawk in his hand came out of his hand and flew out with a flutter. The weapon is gone. The right hand was even more swept away by the force of this bullet. The whole body door was wide open, and there was no more obstruction. Die. Yanin stepped on it. Assault. Stimulated by the warrior's primary skills, the figure burst forward violently in place, and the war spear in his hand slammed into the opponent's head with great strength. This moment, the commander's eyes widened, and his body was filled with blood and chi, obviously wanting to activate his own skills. It's just that. Too late. The human figure in front of him didn't give a chance at all. Boom. With a loud bang, a huge half of the head suddenly exploded like a watermelon. The goblin commander was killed. Yanin retracted the gun and shook it gently, and the blood on the blade of the gun suddenly splashed on the ground. At the same time, there was a ringing in his ears, too. Ding! Congratulations to candidate Yanin for successfully clearing the goblin dungeon. Your difficulty level is Nightmare. Your clearance time, 14 minutes and 47 seconds. Your college entrance examination results have been successfully included. After the college entrance examination voice assistant reminder has been completed, please receive your dungeon clearance rewards. There will naturally be a reward for successfully clearing the next dungeon. Of course, this is not a reward for the college entrance examination. It's just that this year's Yanin Provincial College Entrance Examination shows a copy of the Goblin Dungeon as the content of the exam. In view of the difficulty and time of your clearance, your evaluation is SSS level. Congratulations on being confirmed as the first person to record this dungeon. Begin to distribute clearance reward, huh? Is this the first person in history? Yunshin's face could not hide his joy. Doesn't this mean that he doesn't even need to be sure of other people's achievements now, and he is already clearly the champion of Jiangmen province? Of course, it's not that simple. After all, the system hasn't been finalized yet. Not only that, but he is also the first person in the history of this goblin dungeon. And at this moment, the reward has been distributed. Congratulations on earning 15,650 XP. Congratulations on earning 20 free attribute points and 20 skill points. Congratulations on obtaining the Green Forest Belt, Gold Star. Congratulations on winning the Green Forest Gloves, Gold Star. Congratulations on earning the title, Goblin Slayer. Due to your status as the first person in the dungeon, you will unlock an achievement talent. Please choose one of the three. 1. Rapid Spell Casting. A. You will be guided by chanting and gestures when casting magic in a large and simple way, and even cast spells in an instant with low-level skills. 2. Strike Aura. A. Your attack speed will be increased by 30%, and each third attack will deal an additional 80% damage. 3. Unyielding. A. When you are too badly injured, you will automatically receive a 100% attack damage bonus and attack speed bonus. Choose one out of three. It has to be said that these three achievement talents are all good things. But judging from his current tactics, Yunshin still chose Fast Casting. You have selected 1. Rapid Cast. In a flash, a new realization poured into Yunshin's mind, and at this moment, his understanding of the magical elements rose to a new level. Very good. The low-level skills of the magic department are already simple in terms of chanting and gesture guidance. Now, he was even able to ignore the process and unleash the effect of instantaneous magic. Don't look at it, just omit that little bit of time. Some skills may be less than half a second. The situation of war is changing rapidly, and if you can save a little more time, you will have more security. What's more, Yun Chen, who has a keen combat instinct, often takes a short time of half a second as content. Take the battle against the Goblin Commander just now. If he can activate the Guardian ability instantly, he will not be interrupted by his own forced pick. Buzz. At this time, a pillar of golden light descended from above the dome and landed directly on the stone seat. When the light dissipated, I saw two more pieces of equipment on the stone seat. These are the two pieces of gold quality equipment that are rewarded for clearing the level. Equipment. Green Forest Belt, Quality, Gold Star. Attributes. Constitution plus 10, Strength plus 5, Level Requirements, 10 or above. Racial Restrictions. Terran, Occupation Restrictions, none. Green Forest Set Effect. 1 2-piece set. After 5 seconds out of battle, you will gain continuous vitality, mana, and physical strength recovery according to your own constitution. 2 4-piece set. Under the effect of 2-piece set, the overflowing life force will automatically generate a life shield, and the overflowing magic power will generate a magic shield. Equipment. Green Forest Fist Gauntlet. Quality. Gold Star. Attributes. Strength plus 10, Constitution plus 5. Level Requirements. 10 or above. Racial Restrictions. Terran. Occupation Restrictions. None. Green Forest Set Effect. 1 2-piece set. After 5 seconds out of battle, you will gain continuous vitality, mana, and physical strength recovery according to your own constitution. 2 4-piece set. Under the effect of 2-piece set, the overflowing life force will automatically generate a life shield, and the overflowing magic power will generate a magic shield. Good equipment. Yunshin sighed. With his net worth and background, he can't touch gold level equipment. All of them are black iron, bronze level equipment. Although the sword in the staff is rare, it is only of bronze 2-star quality. And it's still a set. In terms of value alone, he has almost finished his novice outfit. Level. Level 10, 15,653 thousandths, free attribute points, 20. Skill points, 20, the rest of the rewards have also arrived. As for the level, you need to manually upgrade it yourself, because the value accumulated by the experience bar can be shared with the subclass. At present, Yanin does not have any sub-professions, so he does not hesitate to upgrade himself. I have to say that the experience reward for SSS level evaluation is also unusually rich, and it has made him upgrade a lot of levels at once. Congratulations on upgrading to level 11, you have gained 3 free attribute points, and you have gained 3 skill points. Congratulations on your upgrade to level 12, you have gained 3 free attribute points, and you have gained 3 skill points. Congratulations on your upgrade to level 13, you have gained 3 free attribute points, and you have gained 3 skill points. Level 13, 2,658 thousandths. Counting the upgrades, the newly obtained 29 free attribute points are also distributed as evenly as possible. Strength 49, Constitution 48, Dexterity 47, Intelligence 47, excluding attribute bonuses from worn weapons. After clicking on the attribute points, Yanin also immediately got feedback from his body, and he obviously became a lot stronger. As for title, Goblin Slayer, the effect of the title is that the attack will deal a 25% damage bonus to the goblin race. Good Harvest. This also opened up new ideas for Yanin. As long as he can clear the record number of dungeons, maybe he will be able to use this path to get more free attribute points without relying too much on the system. The duration of the weakness after the blood explosion has been reduced by a lot. After Yanin put on his new gloves and belt, he immediately found that he was recovering his strength rapidly after leaving the battle, and even the weakening effect after the blood explosion had been weakened a lot. And this effect, not bad, it's time to get back to. At this moment, Yanin returned to his heart like an arrow. With such a good result, he was a little excited in his heart, and wanted to tell his sister the good news as soon as possible. Half a month ago, he didn't even dare to imagine that he could come this far. But just as he was about to use the return scroll, the stone seat in front of him suddenly collapsed inward. As the spider's web-like cracks widened, a large entrance to the cavern appeared. This made Yanin a little confused. He poked his head down into the cavern and saw another dungeon underneath. From this, a thought came to Yanin's heart: this won't be the legendary, hide the level. At present, his college entrance examination has been handed in. Going out of the dungeon, or entering the next dungeon, will not affect the score. It's a living leveling experience. It would be a shame to miss it. Driven by curiosity, Yanin, a bold artist, decided to break through this hidden level. Speaking of which, it may take less than a minute for him to get to the 4th level. After all, he's too quick to deal with bosses. The blood explosion buffs the effect for 20 seconds, and the result is less than a few seconds, just in time to perfectly execute the commander. Outside. Maybe it's because of the multiple screen cuts, so that this time there was a slight delay in the real-time synchronization picture. When Yanin in the dungeon picked up the reward equipment, the teachers and students in the audience here had just finished watching Yanin finish executing the commander boss. The poor commander was blocked and counterattacked, and the tomahawk fluttered. The swinging arms suddenly opened the door of the body. Then there was a surprise attack by Yanin, and the gun pierced through the head like a dragon. It's as simple as that. The entire processing time is only 7 seconds, 8 seconds, or even 8.5 seconds, which is definitely not half the time of the blood explosion buff. Quiet. There was a deathly silence, and the whole scene could be heard as if a needle had dropped. There was less than 2 seconds of silence. Wow. In less than an instant, it was like a volcanic eruption, and the entire silent auditorium instantly boiled. Yanin. Damn, maybe less than 8 seconds, God, how did you do that? This moment. Not to mention the excited students, even Principal Fang was as excited as a big child of more than 200 pounds, waving the suit and tie in his hand and shouting loudly. The cultivation kung fu of decades is of course gone, just like Fan Jinzongju. The principal just wants to shout loudly to the world at this moment about the rise of Dongyun High School. Oh my God, he really did. The head teacher of the rocket class of the 2 classes was full of shock. If you want to say happy, for some reason there are not much, but you are bitter in your heart, this is not their protege after all. Jin Sheng on the side clenched his fists and was very excited, and this recognized honest man was also a rare emotional outburst, and even shouted the name of Cloud God with the students in the audience. On the other side of the seat, the first seed of the school who had high hopes, Xiao Wen, had a complicated face. This slide shovel destroys the center of gravity. Monster's body. The homeopathic upward pick interrupts the opponent's skill and picks the opponent into the air. And then, floating combos. Damn. He was able to do 6 consecutive strikes in the air. What kind of physical fitness, this? And the final parry counterattack perfectly shook the opponent's weapon and made up for the last shot. In those few seconds, there were not many people who could understand such complex tactics. The vast majority of people only know that Yunshin has solved the boss in a few seconds, so they are elated in carnival for it. Many people can't say much detail about how to do it. Xiao Wen understood, but it was difficult to be happy. Because he knew that he couldn't do it, he was even more desperate after learning about the gap between himself and the other party. This Yunshin, who suddenly came out halfway, had completely taken away his light, and even bloomed even more dazzling than him.